Greetings, friends. Hello and welcome to episode 138 of Into the Necrosphere. It is never a bad day when I'm catching up with a bro, and there are few that I enjoy having on the show more than my good friend Shayan of Trivax. He is also the host of the excellent Iblis Manifestations podcast. I was on that show about 4 or 5 episodes ago, decided it was time to carry on the conversation. So if you're familiar with that chat, then you know that you can expect some seriously spicy conversation. We got into it across a raft of topics over the course of about an hour and 45 minutes. That is going to be coming your way very shortly, but first, a band called Ubий out of Russia have just put out their self-titled EP. I absolutely love this. Think you guys will enjoy it too, so I wanted to share it with you as soon as possible. This is my favorite track off of that EP. It's called To the Ground. To the Ground by Ubий off of their self-titled debut EP. It's available right now on Bandcamp, and I will post the link to that in the description of the podcast. So go check it out. If you buy yourself anything there, as always, let them know where you heard about them. But great stuff there. I scanned the lyrics as best I could, but I didn't find any Putin propaganda. So those of you that were concerned about that, you don't need to worry. You're safe. Folks, thank you so much for tuning into the podcast. If you are new to the show, make sure that you elbow drop that subscribe button on your podcasting platform of choice, whether that be YouTube, Amazon, Spotify, Apple, or wherever else it is that you consume your podcasts on. Remember to follow me on social media. And also, if you absolutely love the show and you want to show your love and support, I don't have a Patreon. I most likely will never have a Patreon. I do, however, have a Teespring store. So if you are fashion forward and you want to look both badass and grim and necro, then go head over there and check out the t-shirts, hoodies, and whatnot that I sell on there. Everything that I sell, I plow straight back into the show. And actually, on this conversation with Shayan, I ended up talking about some of the things that I'm planning to add into the Necrosphere. So a couple of exciting podcast updates coming your way there as well. Also coming up later in the show, I'm going to be talking about another new find of mine, a band called Orob. If you follow me on social media, then you know I already spoke about the record last week, but I'll share with you in detail my thoughts on the whole album. I think it's absolutely fantastic. Came out at the back end of last year, and proof once again that doing a best of list for a particular year at any point other than February or January, February in the following year is a fool's errand. I'll tell you what, it's not a fool's errand, however. Following my fellow horsemen of the podcasting apocalypse, and that includes Mike Hill and Everything Went Black. It includes Mike Hill and Necromaniacs, and it also includes my good friend Brandon Legion of the Horrible 666 podcast. Between all of the shows that we do, you pretty much have your entire week covered with wholesome, intelligent, non-woke, excellent content. So make sure that you check it out. Make sure you subscribe to those guys. And then finally, do stick around until the very end of the show, because it'll be time for another one of my infamous news, rants, and react segments. Who knows what I'll be talking about this week? I actually, to be honest, have had such a busy week. I've not had a chance to even look at the news, on either Metal Storm or the Democrats Guide to Rock Music at the time that I'm recording this intro. So everything that you're going to get from me in about an hour and 45 minutes time is going to be fresh. Folks, on that note, I would like to welcome back to the podcast my friend Shayan. Your mic's a little bit soft, mate.
Soft as in quiet.
Yeah, get that gain up.
Is this any better?
A little bit more.
All right. Better now?
I'm surprised you can still hear anything, because I just read an article that said apparently you could hear the Rammstein show 11 miles away from Coventry.
That is correct, yeah.
Which is where you watched it from.
Yeah,
you were right. From the photos that I saw, you were right up on, basically front of the stage.
Yeah, I don't fuck around, man. If I really want to see a band, and for them, like I said, it was a bucket list thing. I never actually seen them before.
I was about to say, were you a Rammstein virgin?
Yeah, more or less, if you can call it that. They were still they're actually one of the earlier bands I discovered back in Iran. And I didn't initially get to them. And then a few years later, I kind of got into them through the older members of Trivax over in the UK. And then I was always like, I have to see this live. Yeah, so I did. And it was actually a pretty fucking good show, It's a different kind of show, It's different to, say, watching Niflheim or Destroyer 666 live, but it's enjoyable on a different scale, because production wise, you can't really compete with those fucking guys at all. As far as the budgeting or the whole engineering of it is fucking crazy.
Well, I read another insane fact today about their show. They use 1,000 gallons of petrol to like fuel to light those pyros and the fire and all that shit. 1,000, not 1,000 gallons, sorry. Is it 1,000 gallons? No, 1,000 liters, 265 gallons.
That's a lot.
That's fucking mental, mate. It's just fucking insane. But I'm with you. So firstly,
some of these global warming people aren't protesting Rammstein.
As soon as I saw that article, I was like, I actually looked it up, because I thought to myself, maybe this is something I'll talk about on the news rant. And I thought to myself, it's just a matter of time before people go, watching a rock show is great, but what about global warming? What about the effect on the climate? And then there's a big picture of Till setting himself on fire.
Yeah, that sounds good. I mean, also, what about China? What about India? Right? Yeah, we talked about this before. I mean, it's just one of them things. It's complicated. I'm
all time highs on the old coal demand right now. I guess that's okay. It's like it's like over here. Obviously, if you've been in the UK or you've been in North America, you could not move without seeing something celebrating National Pride Month, which I'm fine with. But those very same companies who, if you say I don't want to celebrate Pride Month, you just say that, will fire you instantly. But they will not even breathe a word of pride in their Saudi Arabia office, in their Dubai office, or anywhere where they might upset the established political elites.
Yeah, sure. I think that's exactly what it is. Yeah.
But so anyway, let's just close off the Rammstein talk track first and foremost, because you touched on something about the show. I do agree. You can't really compare it to anybody. I mean, I do say it's the greatest show I've ever seen. There's nothing that compares to that. Mm-hmm. And the feeling that you get from it, like the way I don't think you really appreciate their music until you've seen them live. But when anybody asks me like, what's the best show you've ever seen, I'll always say like Rammstein, but I can't compare Rammstein to any other band. So this band or that band. That's kind of how you have to look at it. They're on another fucking on a totally different league.
Yeah, 100%. That's what I was trying to say as well. It's really hard to like put them up against anyone else. I mean, the only other bands whose stage production maybe comes close, I would probably say, is bands like Slipknot or Metallica's got a relatively big production as well, but I don't think anyone comes anywhere close to Rammstein. But for me, it's a different experience. It's good to have it, but I also don't want to go to a fucking stadium for every show I want to watch. I like the small shows. I like being in the same room. I like to be able to feel the breathing of the vocalist, and being right at the front, right in the middle of the heat of it. I mean, all shows are enjoyable. I don't see the point of limiting yourself, and being that much of an elitist that you only have to enjoy one or the other, so yeah, I think it's cool. And like I said, I've got no problem with it being what it is as well. I feel the same way about the Ghost as well. I've said this many times before. The fact that Ghost are getting as big as they are now is a fucking fantastic thing. Whether you like the music or not, I think good, because there are fewer gateway bands at the moment that are as, let's say, new as a band like Ghost, even though they've still relatively been around for a little while, or at least as musicians for a long time. I think it's really, really fucking good that they're there. And honestly, I would much rather the 14, 15-year-olds today get into metal through Ghost than through, like, I don't know, all these bands with like fucking sentence long names, and all this like core stuff, and fucking Avenged Sevenfolds and Bring Me the Horizons. I would much rather kids discover this music through a band like Ghost, where at least there's like it's stylistically tasteful, and also at least in a tongue-in-cheek way has the devil element to it. And I think that's very important to maintain that within this style of music. And I think having that sort of at the gateway, I think it makes for a better result down the line, really.
Yeah, I agree with you. No getting around it. I despised the last Ghost record. But they were another band where when I had seen them live, I kind of really got it. Like I thought to myself, it doesn't matter what you think of this band live, they are fantastic. And they had a Metallica audience, because I opened for Metallica when I saw them, just eating out of the palm of their hands. And their first two records, I think, are very good. A couple of the others have some decent songs on. It's not my thing. I personally think they're the poor man's merciful fate. But then, exactly to your point, would you rather somebody discover metal through Merciful Fate, or would you rather they discover metal through Poison? You know, it's like I guess the end result is the same, but I agree with you around the principles and the aesthetics. I think they're frankly, I would actually then by that mantra say they're a better band to discover metal through than Slipknot. I think Slipknot's a bunch of whiny nonsense, to be honest. Terrible lyrics, atrocious show, one of the biggest assholes for a frontman on the face of the earth. The only thing that he does extremely well is he did a cover, and you can just see a bootleg of it on YouTube. He did a cover of "Ain't Talking About Love" by Van Halen, and when I heard that, I was like, Jesus! As much as I think he's a complete dweeb, this man was born to sing that song. It's a great tune, and he does it just perfect justice. But yeah, beyond that, Slipknot. I mean, just if you're 5'5", I'm 6'6". I mean, that is like the calling card of the moron in metal. I was doing that Facebook page I've told you about, that seemed to be how people like shine you on, you know.
Oh man, yeah, fucking yeah. You know what? I think actually, I would say that their first two albums are actually pretty good. They're quite historic, especially. I prefer the second one, but the first one is one of them, whether you like it or not. I don't think you can deny the impact that had at the time, because I think that metal music for a long time, the sort of, whether for better or worse, I feel like the angsty aspect of it wasn't connecting as well with everyone. And it was more the, it was just there. But I feel like with Slipknot, what they did, and I'm not endorsing them in any way, this is purely from an analytical point of view. But if you think about it, I think that what they did was that they sort of connected this emotional aspect through the harder, heavier stuff. And I think this connected with a lot of youth, which is why I think that's the main reason probably why they became as big as they became so quickly, was that, yeah, it was an interesting band. It was an unusual image, unusual lyrics, very flashy, very it's very music industry kind of, maybe initially you might not think that would work, but looking back at it, it's like, oh, of course, that makes perfect sense why that became successful.
Yeah.
And I also think that it was the emotional edge that a lot of the kids at the time probably connected with, and I'm not afraid to admit, I also did when I was 14 years old back in Iran. I think that lasted maybe about 4 or 5 months, but still, as I've said to you before, and I've said it on my own podcast as well, I try not to, if anyone at any point has served as any form of a bridge for me throughout my music listening or even performing journey, I still give him some kind of a respect,
Well, dude, I'm with you on that. And I think, especially as I've grown older, I don't really give a shit what anyone thinks about my taste in music. You're talking to somebody who has raved on this podcast many times about how much I love Wisconsin Death Trip by Static X. And it's a record, by the way, I still listen to frequently to this day. On top of that, another thing I won't shy away from, I recently, every so often, I'll go back to some 90s stuff. I recently rewatched the cover that Limp Bizkit did of Thieves at Woodstock 99. And I'm very sorry, I don't like Fred Durst very much. Not even a big fan of Limp Bizkit. But there is no way you can watch what that dude did to that crowd when they played that song and not be fucking impressed. I mean, that is command of an audience that is on a different level. It's like on a level we don't really see all that much today anymore. I think it sounds fucking cool. And it makes me, I look at it, and even as a 42-year-old man, I'm like, Jesus Christ, man, I wish I could have been me doing that. It's just something that's just so like primal about it. And I get what you're saying about Korn. About Slipknot. I was going to say Korn kind of had a similar effect, though. I mean, again, not a band I'm a huge fan of, but they definitely connected emotionally with a lot of kids around that time. I mean, really connected emotionally with them. And, you know, I'd be curious to see the statistics on how many kids who got into metal via Korn, you know, are now diehard, you know, Achilles, Panzerfaust, you know, like it's only about the grim stuff for them. Like for me, the grim stuff was happening at the same time all the other new metal shit was happening. And as I said, the only real new metal record that spoke to me was Wisconsin Death Trip. The rest, there was like one or two songs and I go, this isn't bad. But for the most part, it was, you know, grim had taken over by that point.
The thing that I will say is, I think a lot of guys, especially maybe, you know, the ones that are maybe a little bit closer to being mid-aged, I think they tend to look at this sort of thing and instantly judge it, because to them, they've got like the bitter taste in their mouth of how when all the cool stuff was around and this shit just popped out of nowhere, and it was like a really infected version of metal, if you will, and it was getting attention everywhere. But you really got to look at is in the modern times. I mean, first of all, you need music to evolve for it to continue, in the sense of newer bands emerging. And I think if something is good, if it has value, bands will always gravitate back to that eventually. And I think that for me, I see the positive in all of that. In that, if anyone today is discovering metal, doesn't matter through what fucking band, it might be a band that I absolutely hate, but that same person 4 or 5 years down the line could very much be wearing my band's shirts and attending our shows. And I think this is a necessity for the survival of the genre and for the survival of younger bands. And we need to kind of, I think, give in with the bullshit. But I think what we can do better, like I said, is how they get into it, and like the road that they take down. For example, the comparison between them either discovering it through Ghost or discovering it through, you know, like I said, one of these like
Linkin
cringy
Park.
fucking, yeah. Well, listen, you know, I know people who discovered metal through Linkin Park and now are wearing blasphemy shirts.
Yeah.
I think that's fine. I think that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. That doesn't make you a lesser fan. It just means that you had the same thing within you and you just ended up finding it through a different way. Not everyone has to discover it through a fucking cassette tape that they found, you know, in the hand of a fucking crack addict that was dead on the side street.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I actually think, you know, and look, I joke around about stuff, but I think ultimately, I think one of the very important things about the scene, in order for the scene to flourish and thrive, and I do think it's happening, at least in pockets, it needs to shake off a lot of its immaturity. There's a lot of, you know, you kind of talk about that, you know, the middle-aged guys still acting like fucking teenagers. I remember just when the podcast got started, I remember posting something about a band, and it wasn't even I can't remember who it was, but it wasn't something that is so grim and cult and underground. And this guy on Twitter went off at me, like, he's saying I'm ruining the scene, like, you know, I'm only into bands no one knows about. And I'm like, dude, what the fuck does it matter what I'm into? It's more for everybody. This is like this is the best thing about metal in this was 2019, is abundance. There's so much great stuff coming out. You've got so much to choose from. Share the word, spread the word about bands no one has ever heard of.
Do you know who that reminds me of?
Who?
Did you ever watch Little Britain, where there was that one episode where Matt Lucas was like the only gay in the village, and another gay guy comes in, and then he's like, "No, you're not gay," and then it's kind of like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's who that reminds me of.
Yeah.
Don't be that guy.
Fuck no. And like I said, I mean, it's true of a lot of things, right? Like we can talk about the woke gang in the metal scene, and we can talk about all of that stuff as well.
So,
but it's I do think that I think in the long run, I feel like the scene will kind of have it's headed towards kind of two tandem things going at the same time. There's the childish metal hammer crowd, I'll call them, and then there's this other kind of groundswell of people that have grown up with the music, or like, they feel it in their blood. But they're also very open-minded. I think they're generally very kind of, I wouldn't say socially conscious, but they're very conscious people. They're intellectually curious. And I've seen that more and more the longer this podcast has gone on, actually. And it makes me it's exciting because it makes me much more proud to be part of it. The people you meet, the kind of way you see things go, it feels like there's almost sort of fans that are gravitating towards those bands as well. And I think, what you're doing with the podcast, and I think where I think Trivax could go once you guys put this new record out, I think you will, in the UK especially, you'll be a major force as far as that movement is concerned.
Yeah, I think so too, man. Listen, the thing that matters the most to us, obviously I say like the woke crowd can go fuck themselves. I kind of say that tongue in cheek, but I also kind of mean it as well, because I feel like it's limiting. I don't like limitations.
Yeah.
See, and this applies to both sides of the spectrum. I don't like limits, and for me, I think that our sort of message, if you will, or our intent, more importantly, the internal, before we get to the external, is always one of freedom within the sort of the compounds of integrity, and that's all it is, and intellectualism, and actually, just being able to, through art and music, get that fucking needle and just inject that energy into everyone. And it's just like, wake up, and it's kind of like, that's kind of, I think, where at least a lot of my own artistic tendencies, besides dealing with my own personal shit, I have a lot of fucking things I have to work through. And there's definitely a darkness there, which I believe recently has actually made a bit of a comeback. So I'm going to welcome him. But aside from this, I think that, I think that when Trivax comes out, I'm not even so much focused on that. I'm not concerned on that. I believe that as long as we stick true to ourselves and stick to our own truth and are honest with ourselves and do the best that we can, and doing the thing that we enjoy the most and give less of a shit about the external, it will all fall into place, because there's no pretense. This is what it is.
Yeah.
And when you're in that situation, it's not very difficult to make a case for yourself, if you ever have to. You just do what you do and you enjoy it, and the people who enjoy the same thing will recognize the honesty and the integrity within that.
Yeah.
And we all share a great experience, and that's all it is. And if others aren't into that, then that's fine, no problem.
So when you say the darkness is coming back, are you back on the steroids? What's happening?
I've never been on steroids. Someone, I think, I finally had the recent thing of like someone on my fitness page was like,
asking you whether you're natty.
It's like, mate, if I was on steroids, I want a fucking refund right now. But but I took it as a compliment anyway.
Yeah.
No, the darkness is something in my personal life. It's something I feel within myself, which is almost inexplainable, but I think I know exactly what it is, and it's here. It's coming back. So yeah.
And is that a good or a bad thing?
I think that's completely objective.
It depends on depends on the new Trivax music, and I'll be able to tell you after I hear that.
Yeah, man. Yeah, but for now, let's focus on the next album, which okay, I'm gonna put out the first news here into the Necrosphere. We've signed a deal. We're ready to fucking go.
Awesome. Are you at liberty to say who with?
Not yet. You'll all see the announcements very soon, I think.
You will be telling me offline.
Yeah, I think pretty much not long after this episode comes out, you will probably have an announcement.
Yeah. All right. Well, like I said, you'll be hanging on. I want to know. I want to know offline
Oh
who it
yeah,
was.
yeah. You got dibs on the insider information.
All
No
right.
problem.
All right. Good. And then the other thing that I'm going to insist upon, given how aggressively I have promoted this band, when the first single of the new record drops, how about debuting it on Into the Necrosphere?
That's an interesting thought. That's a cool idea. Well, tell you what, let's talk about this because I think the way we might do it, we might actually have a few, and there may or may not be a video for one of them. So
Cool.
We'll talk about that.
Awesome. Well, I tell you where we could shoot the video when you finally come and visit. We'll go to Nuffield Gym up the road, train.
No, that sounds fucking great. Yeah, 100%. I would love to do that. Yeah.
Well, dude,
cool.
we're what's Sam? So I've now finally gotten to a point where I'm starting to suss out what gear I'm going to need to be able to do podcasts in person. I have no expectations of doing loads of them. There's a gentleman drummer from multiple bands that I'm a big fan of who has said he'd love to come on. He wants to do it in person, so he will definitely be one of the first folks on the list. But I would love to do some kind of, I don't know what the word is. I was the word wacky was in my head, but that's not right. But just stuff that's a little bit more off beat, So have you over here at some point. We'll go and we'll light the barbecue fire. We'll have some drinks, talk some shit, and just literally record it right then and there. I think it'll be fun to kind of capture a conversation in that sort of setting. So we'll definitely need to do something like that. We'll record 100%. half of it while we're working out as well.
Yeah, man, that sounds fantastic. The only thing that I can think of, which I might have some hesitation towards, is I don't know if the drinks are going to be halal, so I might have to double check that.
Well, I don't know about Camden Hells, but it's depends on what you're into. I don't drink the hard stuff. I've never been a fan of hard liquor, but I do like red. I've become in my old age a massive fiend for red wine. Like, not when I say fiend, I really know what wine to go out and buy. I know what's good. I know what's crap.
And that is Gall's fault, right?
No, it was kind of before that, but he definitely probably helped keep the spark up there.
Gotcha. I mean, listen, Jackie, for me, I used to drink ethanol with apple juice when I was 15 years old back in Iran. So, I don't drink a lot anymore, but, if we're going to do it, it's no problem.
Yeah, no, we will. I don't drink much either, but I like having some, I like having a glass of top-notch wine, with my steak.
Yeah, absolutely. I like that too. And yeah, to the point of the podcast, I would absolutely love to do that, man. It would be a fucking pleasure. We'll be sure to have some fucking weights around as well, so we'll get a pump on before like the video comes on. So we're like all fucking jacked up and shit, before during the takes, just with like some extra testosterone on the.
Speaking of being jacked, I obviously follow your fitness page. And I see, some of the progress shots that you post. You're looking hard, mate. All of the stuff that I've posted recently, the deadlifts and all those sort of things, it's in response to that. Like, I was like, I can't have Shayan make me look like an asshole. So it's like,
that's awesome.
But yeah, man, like I said, you're looking ripped.
Thank you, man. I am working hard. The reason, and I know this is probably not a very good impression of me, but the reason why I was slightly late to the podcast was because I was just murdering my quads at the gym before I started this. So if I seem a little, that's because I've just been doing that before I fucking come on here. I haven't it's great, honestly, but thank you so much. Like, I'm feeling very good to myself at the moment. I've been following, I'm still not coached, I'm still doing it on my own, but I've been following like a regimen that I made up for myself, and I had a cutting phase between end of March and just at the summer solstice. I ended it, and now I'm going back on maintenance. Sorry, I don't. This is probably boring to a lot of people to talk about, but because it is boring, and I think that's part of what makes it special is the fact that it's boring, but you put up with it, then you stick to it, and then you get exciting results. It's kind of what it is. It's like a springboard of life in a way. But yeah, I very much appreciate that, man. And listen, you're killing it yourself, man. I still couldn't deadlift as much as you, so kudos to that.
Well, I did. I've started a regimen that I got it off of Athlean X actually, and I've always had like a specific set routine that I followed. But the Athlean X regimen is push pull legs. Now I cheated a little bit because you're supposed to do push pull legs, have a day's rest, and then repeat. What I do is push pull legs, push pull, and then I have 2 days over the weekend because I've got my daughter here, so I can't. Over the weekends it's kind of out for me.
Well, you're missing one leg day there, man.
So I miss one leg day, but I mean, I work my legs hard enough, without it, that it's not that big of a deal.
I think people who go and do leg day like 2 or 3 times a week, I don't know what the fuck they're doing. I don't think they're training it right. I just don't see how that even works, to be honest with you.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that. I will say, doing deadlifts, for example, twice a week. After about, I'm now in week 5, and I actually had to take the day off because I said to I woke up and I said to Paige, like, I'm fucking dying. Yeah, I said my back is sore. My lats are really killing me. My shoulder is sore. I'm just gonna have like one extra day, and then I'll do it. I'll pick it up again tomorrow. But it's
are you on creatine or anything at the moment?
No. I stopped all that stuff. I used to take a lot of supplements, and I ditched all of it. The only thing that I do is I supplement with vitamins. I take those testosterone supplements, the Tonkat Ali, and then I just upped my red meat intake. And as soon as I did that, and I made sure I have 4 eggs a day and all that sort of stuff, I found my recovery started getting a lot better, and my strength just went up massively.
I think, yeah, man, I've done the same thing actually recently. I've also upped my red meat, which again, if Tomji Warrior is listening, sorry, man, but it's great. It's great for you. You feel so much better, and especially if it's sunny. I've started eating a lot more fruits as well, which is like in most bodybuilding diets, they always tell you like stay away from that. It's too much sugar, but I've started eating fruits and I'm enjoying the fuck out of it.
Keeps the sugar cravings at bay. So the question is, because a lot of the bodybuilders that'll say that to you will then post stuff on Instagram, having my cheat day, and they've got like 10 donuts and all sorts of shit around them. And that's
bullshit.
I was about to say all that stuff. If you want to do that, that's fine, but don't discourage people from getting a sweet treat out of a pear or out of a banana or something like that. So
and the thing is as well with a lot of these guys as well, they're all fucking juiced up to fuck, which there's nothing wrong with that. But I think the average person seeing that needs to be aware that, there needs to be some kind of fucking transparency here that, people, it's like I kind of get this with Dwayne Johnson a lot. I like that we're talking about this on a metal podcast, by the way. But I get this with Dwayne Johnson a lot. I think he posts his cheat days, which are like notorious. They look really good. They look delicious. But I think that the average person who is most likely not as intelligent as you would want them to be, or informed at least, they look at that and they're going to think like, okay, yeah, if I eat shit like this, I'm going to get jacked like this guy. Yeah. And it's like, no, that guy's on fucking TRT. And,
he's I can tell you now, he's on a lot more than TRT.
Well,
TRT is will get your testosterone level up to a reasonable level again, but he's on way more. Yeah.
Actually, yes, you are right.
Mexico's supplementation industry is booming thanks to him.
Yes. and then the thing I'm trying to say is people see that, or they see all these Hollywood people like Chris
Yeah.
Hemsworth or whatever, and then they're instantly like, holy shit, I can get like that too. And then they go to the gym for 6 months and then they get depressed. It's like, why am I not getting results? And it's like, that is really fucked up. Don't think like that. Don't think like that ever. It's you need to, there's like certain truths to it that you need to understand. And I think the thing that helped me personally kind of climb this mountain, or even sort of like sculpt it, if you will, was just competing with myself and having that motivation. Like, to me, I go and I look at myself in the mirror, and I remember looking at myself 4 or 5 years ago when I
Yeah.
was like fucking like extremely
Husky.
obese. Yeah.
Well, I saw the photo, and I wouldn't say extremely obese, mate. I mean,
I would say near death obese, actually. Anything
no,
more than
I'd
that
say
is
you
like
were.
you're not even experiencing the human
I'd
existence.
say you
It's like you may as
were
well.
the average Southerner, aged 40. So no,
Well, the average Southerner needs to fucking sort their shit out, man. Fuck, I saw, like, I honestly, it gives me such anxiety when I see people who are like obese, because I know that they don't realize it. I know that they might think that they should do something, but I don't think anyone really realizes what's going on. And I just today, we had like a whole lot of Trivax merch orders come through, and which is great, by the way. Grateful for the support. It's awesome. And I went to the post office, the local one, and they always know me. They're like, oh yeah, there's this guy with all these fucking vinyls and t-shirts. And I went in, and there was a guy sat there, and he was super, super overweight. And I just looked at him, and I was like, fuck, he's like, it's my biggest, it's almost like one of my biggest fears. To me, it's
you're
like,
not
that
allowed
is
to
a
say anything
dying
to him,
man.
because
No, I think
otherwise
you
you're
should.
a fat phobic, and you're not part of the fat acceptance movement.
Well, fat acceptance is like saying, I don't know, like, so I don't know. It's like, that's like, it's a fucking serious illness, Like, I saw this
Yeah.
guy, and I'm like, he's there, he's got eyes, he's looking around, he's got a name, he's got a personality, but that is a dying man right there. And I don't think he was much older than me, if not maybe even younger. That really terrifies me, it's like I'm literally staring at a corpse. And I think unless you get yourself out of that, you never realize. And you know what? This fat shaming thing might actually just be a good thing for you. Because why do I say this? Obviously, you need some degree of knowledge and guidance to actually be able to get yourself out of it, and a
Yeah.
whole fuckload of hard work and consistency. But to me, the thing that actually ticked me personally was the fact that I was sending some pictures back home to my parents about 5 years ago. And my father saw a picture of me sat in the garden of this place I used to live in before. And he said to me, he was like, Shayan, you're looking kind of overweight here, man. I'm a little like concerned for your health. And I got so fucking upset about that. I was like, why would he say that? And my partner at the time, she was like, oh, that's so mean of your father to say this. And I was just like really fucking upset about it. But after like a few days or so, like, I didn't even talk to my dad for a few years. And I was like, this is a man who I respect more than anyone else. And I do not want to be mad at him about anything. Within a few days, I was a bit like, maybe there was something to that. And it was that year. So I started losing weight normally, like just by walking, just by watching what I was eating with the very little knowledge that I had. And I think about 5 or 6 months after that, I actually started going to the gym for the first time. And the rest is history. I stuck to it. And, now I go to the gym, and I am more often than not at least in the top 20% of the people that are there, as far as physiques and strength is concerned, sometimes even higher up. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
It's good. It's a good feeling.
It's an earned feeling as well, which is why it's good. It's like,
yeah,
I think a lot of people go, they'll look at somebody who's built really well, who's got a great physique, and who's obviously worked a lot at it, and they'll go, how do people find that attractive? And the answer is pretty easy. It's because not a lot of people have it. That's why scarcity equals value, or is a determinant of value, and because it takes a lot of fucking work to look like that. That's why there is high value to you looking that way.
And do you know what it is, Jackie? You pointed on something really good here, and it's got my gears running now. The thing with that is the fact that, like how this whole thing with fucking dad bods becoming popular. Why do you think that is? I think that is because men who've got dad bods are easier to control. Because if, as a man, you cannot control your own physique, then that means that you it's almost like, to me, that shows some signs of not having any direction in your way. And I think that it becomes, and it plays into this sort of imbalance between the feminine and the masculine, which we're very much like noticing in society today, which is a horrible fucking thing, actually. You can dispute that however way you want, but that is terrible. Those balances are completely out of order. And I think this is a part of it, how, dad bods are preferred. And like I said, that's because it's lesser challenging for a female to secure that. And then on the other hand, you've got all these OnlyFans girls and whatever, and for them to appear sort of pleasing, like a part of their sales pitch is like pizzas and smoking weed and things like that, and video games, being a lazy piece of shit, basically.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the thing that they're selling. And it's like, those two, they're not good. We're losing our quality here.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. One thing that's interesting too, actually, just as far as kind of the delta in attraction is concerned, I can't remember where I read it, but there was a statistic I read once that said something like the top 70% of men on Bumble, Tinder, and like all the online dating apps are dating the lowest in terms of attractiveness, the lowest 30% of women. And then I was pondering that, and I was like, I know a lot of very attractive women who constantly complain about the fact that they can never find somebody. But if you think about it in terms of a man's currency is validation, and validation is you could probably break that down in terms of what determines validation would come from either time spent or affirmation, actions that equal affirmation. So you see these fucking delta or not delta, beta nerds on Instagram and stuff like that, porn star in full makeup posts a picture and goes, having an ugly day, and then the guy goes, oh hun, I'm so sorry, I'm here for you. Those complete and utter weaklings. But when you are one of those women that can, post a picture of your fucking fingernail, and then all of a sudden there's like you get 1,000,001 likes. If you're in a relationship with somebody, what point is there in you putting up with anything, any slight bit of resistance, turbulence, any of the natural things that a relationship would normally go through? You would just leave, because you can get that steady, drip feed of validation anywhere else. You don't need to get it from your partner. But so there's a lot of things like in the world, that has created just extreme levels of dysfunction. And we'll talk about it in a second, because I know you and I have touched on it offline already as well. But my thoughts on a lot of what's going on with men at the moment. This pushing and frankly, I'm going to say it again, people will disagree with me on this, but an unhealthy, unnatural vegan diet on men that is known to lead to things like a zinc shortage, and a zinc shortage is known to lead to things like a testosterone shortage, a estrogen estrogen surplus, and things like an enlarged prostate. It feels to me like it's by design, because the people that benefit from it, number one, are a government that can control these weaklings. But secondly, the pharma companies who are going to be making massive profits off the fucking statins and the heart medication and the prostate medication and all the stuff that they're going to be selling to you. Like as an example, what's the number one selling drug that Pfizer hawks outside of the vaccine? An antidepressant. What's the second highest selling drug that Pfizer hawks? Viagra. What's the number one? What's the number one side effect of taking antidepressants? Erectile dysfunction. What's one of the biggest side effects of low testosterone? Depression. So, people can say that's, you're being conspiratorial or that's a straw man. I don't think that it is. I frankly do think it's by design.
It absolutely is by fucking design. There's no way to contest that. I mean, if there's anything that's become more and more and more clearer to me in the recent times, it is exactly that. It is how, a diet is a very big, important thing that's being attacked, but, everything from tap water to sunflower to seed oils, right? The seed oils absolutely nuke your fucking gut health. And even like non-stick pans, that is messing with your fucking testosterone. Everything out in the world is almost by design, like you said, out to get your fucking testosterone levels to drop. And what is your testosterone as a man? That is the most important thing that you would want in your system. You want that to be naturally as high as it can get.
Yeah.
And the thing of it is now, there's so many different facets to this. There's a whole thing with cereals as well. Are you aware that, for example, Kellogg's, like the Kellogg's cereals, did you know that they actually, they believed that men's libido was the cause of the greatest evil in the world, and therefore their products are actually by design, admittedly, there to reduce your testosterone? Were you aware of this?
No.
Yeah, they've even said this themselves. It's actually quite an old statement. You should look it up, and then to anyone else listening as well. And the thing is, yes, we're testosterone, manhood is under attack, and this is taking place by a lot of these technical things, but it's also under attack through a certain cultural shift, I believe. And we pointed this on the whole Tinder thing, for example. I think that there is a serious problem with this fast food approach to relationships and to life in general, because the whole thing of it is that the fact that everyone is treated as an option, you can never recreate the same connection between two people another place. I always say that one person has their own unique fingerprint, right? Now put two people together, that's even more unique, right? That is never going to be the same. People aren't replaceable at all. Every relationship is completely different to another. And why do I say that? Well, if you think about it, a relationship that you build with commitment and loyalty with your partner, like you said, it's got all the ups and downs, absolutely, and it's hard. You get to face a lot of parts of yourself that you otherwise never would. And facing those things can be really difficult, right? But it is the best thing you can go through for your own personal growth and for becoming the best version of yourself. And if you treat relationships like, well, if this doesn't work out, I've always got options. There's all these, random chicks on Instagram or whatever. There's always someone whose DMs you could slide into and go after it, and you'd get your instant gratification. But it's almost like that's missing the point. That is seriously missing the point, because there's a real value to loyalty and commitment, because that's what's difficult. It's like it's a music podcast, so it's like the case of being in a band and constantly changing band members. you lose that real chemistry. If you look at everyone around you as replaceable, it's like I'm like this with the drummer from Trivax, and I hope he doesn't mind me saying this, but technically speaking, he's not even the best drummer I've played with. But as far as Trivax is concerned, he is the best drummer for Trivax. Why? Because of my connection and my chemistry with him. And between him and our bass player, Sully, the three of us together work like a fucking unit that is unstoppable, right? And it's one of them things. It's like, and that is what I mean when I say that in a relationship, loyalty and commitment is important. This whole culture of like just casual sex and going around and doing whatever, it's almost like you're the hamster that's constantly running on the wheel, thinking that you're chasing that happiness, thinking that you're chasing something good, when really every time you get close to it, you're abandoning the thing that you actually are chasing. And I think sometimes the way that the society is designed and the way we now perceive things in this fast food culture, it stops us from really appreciating the thing that we have. And I am terrified for the upcoming generations. I mean, my own generation is bad enough, but the ones upcoming, I truly feel bad, and I feel concerned for their upbringing and their sort of approach with attachment and being able to become attached with another person and actually build something together. And nothing easy comes good, yet we're constantly seeking the easy thing. And it's like we're constantly lost in this endless search, and we never end up with the thing that truly makes us happy, because I think our whole concept of it is completely fucking backwards.
Yeah.
And
well, you'll end up getting what you have in Japan right now, which is, this mass detachment between men and women. And what that ends up with is, one, a terrible birth rate, which if you read the books of Peter Zion, you realize that a terrible birth rate is, certainly the terrible birth rate that a lot of Western countries have had over the course of the last several decades. Whilst you and I may joke, certainly I do, and say I don't like most people, frankly, the fucking population should shrink. But it, on a macro level, terrible birth rates bad for a country, very bad. Countries like Germany, Bulgaria, many countries all across Western Europe are in for very rough times as a result of the fact that their population is declining. Japan has one of the most aged populations in the world because of that disconnect between men and women. And what you have now in modern Japan is every single year, statistically, 30,000 people in Japan die by themselves in their apartment. And people only know that something has happened when neighbors alert police to the smell. The government has to run ads and stuff like that, trying to encourage men and women to meet up and have sex just so they can have kids. It's nuts. I think something like I can't remember what the statistic was. 1 in 5 or 1 in 6 Japanese men are still virgins. But it's because they their culture evolved into a culture of detachment. I think Western civilization is going in a similar direction, albeit through different channels. They're still having an extraordinary amount of sex, but they're doing it exactly as you said now. It's completely casual. It's there is no attachment. There's no emotional investment. There's no nothing. It's just like, I'm going to fuck this person and then I'm going to disappear. Now, I can't sit here and say I myself have not partaken in casual romances, but at the same time, I think one of the things that I learned, and I spoke to you about this on your podcast, is I came to a point in my life where I realized that I had spent a big chunk of it chasing this make-believe construct of happiness that was just, firstly, it was influenced by, all manner of nonsense, whether it's movies or whatever the case may be. It was garbage. So I had to completely get rid of that. I had to completely focus just on myself and on what was important in my life. And what was important in my life at the time was my daughter. So I broke it down into the things that, kind of fed into that dynamic. How do I be a great dad? And then what ended up happening was, firstly, I had no problem meeting anybody. I had some of the best fucking years of my life as a bachelor. And then when Paige came around, it was such a natural thing for her to come into to just sort of slot into my life, because it was somebody that for the first time ever, and I was 38 when she and I got together, but for the first time ever, I was bringing somebody into my life because I felt they genuinely added something to it. It was, I didn't feel like, like, again, the typical weakling man goes, I'm going to kill myself if she's not with me. She's my life. You complete me. Jerry Maguire bullshit. It's like I wanted her in my life because she I felt like she added value to my life. And I think that's why 4 years later, it's by far the healthiest relationship I've ever been in. Because it wasn't a juvenile kind of lust infatuation that kind of brought us together. It was something that was a lot more genuine. But I think it's because I think once you see the Matrix, and once you see how all of this, how society works and how you get manipulated, and how, a lot of people operate entirely based on the super ego. Once you disconnect from that, your life becomes infinitely better. And I hope people have been following, because I know I went on a bit of a tangent there, but you understand what I mean.
Absolutely, man. I think this is important. I actually, like you said, might be a tangent, but I think this right now, currently speaking, is probably the most important topic going, because it's like the foundations of what has got us this far through millions and millions of years of evolution is slowly falling apart within a very, very, very short time span. In the grand scheme of things, it's like all of a sudden, all of these things that have worked for us for so many years, we've turned around and said, oh yeah, well, get with the modern times. This is not it anymore. And that is fucking stupid. That is so fucking stupid. Like you mentioned, even with the diet thing, like with the vegan diet.
Well, the worst thing is people are feeding their dogs vegan food and thinking that's great. It's like you realize your dog's jaw is structured to eat meat and meat only. They're not designed to eat whatever plant-based crap you want to give them.
The thing is as well, we get the arguments. And again, listen, disclaimer, I'm not a fucking scientist. I'm not, I'm a musician. That's what I am. But what I also am is a curious mind, and I am an observer of the world, and I'm very much interested in seeing how this whole thing actually works. And I think when you think about it, when it comes to something like that, it is sort of, it's advertised like it's healthy, which is completely false. It's not healthy at all.
Yeah.
And I can break down the details of as to why it's not healthy, right? And it's also advertised that it's better for the environment. And I can also go into why that is not really the case either. You see, I think that when you sort of break down all the bullshit of life and get into what's life asserting, what's actually good for you as a human being, and that includes obviously exercise, a good diet, not being surrounded by electronic devices constantly, even though you and I both are at this moment in time, and all of these things, and having a steady relationships, things like that. These are things that once you embrace them, doesn't matter how much of a misanthrope you are and how much you hate the world or whatever. I don't give a shit. Once you embrace this side of life, then you will eventually be on the path of becoming the best version of yourself, which once you do that, only then you can make positive changes to the rest of the world. Because one big problem that I have, like you mentioned the woke mob earlier, is that everyone is constantly trying to change the world. Everyone is trying to do some good in the world. Everyone wants to be heard. Everyone has something to say, yet they are all a mess within themselves. And there's one positive thing that you can find within the common religions, and I had this discussion recently on Iblis as well, but one of the best things about them is that the work starts with yourself.
Mm.
You got to go and work on yourself first. So to me, when I see, for example, a skinny fat politician, I have no trust in that person because they haven't figured out their own shit.
Yeah.
So unless you're in good shape and you've maybe gone and done ayahuasca at least 3 times, and you've got your shit figured out, I don't trust you. And by that conclusion, I don't trust anyone in control right now.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
And
I'm with you there. I think with the woke stuff, we've spoken about that before, but I really do think with a lot of the things that people have started clinging to in modern life, whether it's climate change, whether it's trans rights, whatever the case may be, it's a symptom of religion disappearing from the world. And then as religion leaves, it creates a vacuum that a lot of people just, unfortunately, they need that crutch. They need that purpose that religion gave people, and that comfort that religion gave people. And so they go, well, this is going to be my existential reason for being. I'm gonna make sure that no one drives a internal combustion engine car again, even though there are now multiple studies that have been done to suggest that because of the pollution created by lithium mining and by everything that it takes to construct an electric car, you only gain a reduction in CO2 at the point that the electric car has driven 150,000 miles. The problem is the average electric car battery conks out at 100,000 miles. Not to mention what we're going to do with those big ass batteries, because as far as I know, recycling them is not easy. So it's Mortis of Marduk mentioned this actually on an interview as well. It's like religion disappeared from the world, and look at now, and look at what is busy replacing it. What's replacing it is far worse.
I agree 100%. And you know what, to that point, and I know this might even be a totally controversial statement, but as far as I'm concerned, I am now actually beginning to see the positives of religion.
Yeah.
Because a lot of the things that a lot of time we contest religion with, and I know religion is a whole shit show of its own, and I'll happily contest that also. Don't get me wrong. You already know my stance on a lot of these things. But
really, you've been very shy and retiring about it most of your life. So, all of the time I've known you.
Right. Yeah. So the thing of it is that for me, I am beginning to see how you can see the positive in some of the things that it has to offer, right? And that is not to say that you take the full thing, because this is exactly what I always said before, is like, for example, how there's no good Muslim, bad Muslims. There's only ones that don't follow the whole thing, and then there's the ones that do.
Yeah.
But if you take out the good parts out of it, there certainly is a lot of lessons to be learned there. And I think at least my own personal approach of questioning religion many a times has been from a perspective of the morality of things, right? So this is the conclusion I've come to now, currently speaking, is that what is this morality even based on? Because if you look at the whole history of human existence, our existence is war. War is existence. You look at the nature, you look at human beings, the only thing that has defined us throughout time is war. And love is war, relationships are war, everything is that. And it's always war for control, for who gets to be in charge. And eventually that control is no longer going to be ours anymore.
Yeah.
And the reason why I even thought of this whole thing was because I was thinking of, guys like in America, guys like Jaco, for example.
Yeah.
I think that he's one of them people that, whether you're like communist, capitalist, pro-America, anti-America, pro-life, anti-life, I don't care what you are. I feel like those kind of people are people that we can all learn something from. And that's not to like endorse him and what he did, but rather endorse the way of thinking.
Yeah.
right? And I think we could all learn a great deal from people like that. And then when I was thinking about that, I was also thinking of, well, whose side are we going to get? Because when I was also thinking of the political situation at the moment with Ukraine and everything going on, it's a very complex situation. But I was like, I kept thinking to myself, there are no good sides because all of the sides have got blood on their hands.
Oh,
But
100%.
then the thought that occurred to me was, well, everything that currently exists is built on death and destruction. That is the whole cycle of life. I mean, the
Yeah.
fact that America is even a country that was built on bloodshed, but so is every other country ever at this point. It's all brutality and bloodshed. So
Well,
maybe Gigi Allen actually had a point with that album, but fucking, do you see what I'm saying? So it's
yeah,
like,
100%.
yeah,
Well, the thing is, if what a lot of people in modern society completely forget is how short of a period of time we've been living at the standard, or in the fashion we've been living in. At the
yeah,
turn of the 20th century, I think the average grocer had 300 items on their shelves. At the turn of the 21st century, the average grocer had 30,000 items on their shelves. Even something as simple as television, color TVs only came into vogue, I think, in the late 1960s, if I'm not mistaken. The internet's only been around since 1993, I believe it was. So if you think about that as kind of you just take the internet age, say 1992, if you want to, and right up until now, that's 30 years against centuries of bloodshed and violence and war and people growing their crops in their shit. And I mean, that was a real thing, up until the turn of I believe it was up until the turn of the 19th century. The fertilizer of the day, people used to go outside and take a dump in the field, and they used to mix it in with the ground. I mean,
yeah,
firstly, can you imagine living like that? Be fucking terrible. But secondly, it's I think people need to ponder those things, because they also need to realize that what we have right now, I mean, really, in the grand scheme of things, is a result of Bretton Woods. It's an order that America created, effectively saying we'll protect you as long as you side with us against Russia, and that's going away, and it's going to change everybody's life exponentially.
yeah. And that's scary, man.
It's fucking
That's
terrifying.
Yeah, it really is. I think yeah, and then that's a thing as well, is the abundance is almost like fucking with us more now.
Mm.
It's like all we ever wanted was abundance and accessibility, and now that very thing is going to be our downfall. Isn't it interesting? It's a cycle of life. Like when you observe that, it's like all this time we've been running and running and running and running, not knowing that all we're doing is kind of digging a hole for ourselves.
Yeah.
I mean, I as a reflecting just purely on my own personal journey as a musician and artist, I very much feel like that. It's like I'm constantly running towards something, but somehow that thing is going. It might very well be the end of me. And obviously, I think I maybe have more valid reasons for feeling that way due to the background that I come from. But I feel like I would have felt somewhat similarly towards that, or at least that's the part of the world that I'm reflecting in, is that we're all somehow running towards into the void. And I think that's a very interesting thing. I mean, like, look at it, like all these avocado and toast people with their fucking oat milks, they'll be fucking like they'd stand no chance. I mean, you mentioned about people shitting in fields. I think in like Edinburgh back in like hundreds of years ago, they used to have they used to have like a bucket in every household, and everyone used to shit in that bucket or piss in it or be sick or whatever, bleed into it, whatever. And then at a certain time, I think at like 6 o'clock every single day, everyone would
I was
go
about to
out
say
and
they toss it out the window.
they'd empty their buckets into the alleyways. So if you were in those alleyways at that time, you were a very unlucky man. So and
Yeah.
I think it's one of them things. They live with sickness on like concrete floors and just hard life. And it's like we have so much to be grateful for, you know. There's so much good shit that we have, and it's like I feel like our detachment to where these things have come from is making us almost destroy the very thing that we've worked for also.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think in many ways, we're a victim of our own excesses. Those excesses have come home to roost now. I would actually make an argument to say that I think I think if you break it down to a more micro level, I think the repeal of Roe v. Wade, and a lot of people will probably feel this is controversial to say, but I think the repeal of Roe v. Wade is a backlash to the excesses of progressivism. In that you can't, you couldn't have people on TikTok boasting that you're not a woman unless you've had 3 abortions, or and some of the crazy shit that was coming out, and not think that those religious lunatics were going to go, I'm not down with this, I'm going to push back against it. And I think that's where the unraveling occurs, right? It's being a victim of our excess. The unraveling occurs at a macro level, but it's also going to occur at a micro level. For every action, there's a reaction. You're gonna, and you see it in less threatening ways. I know Ben Shapiro and his crew have just launched Daily Wire Plus. It's like their own streaming service. They basically, and I think it's not a bad idea actually. They want to have content that's non-woke, removes anything woke or any political agendas from their movies, their TV shows, anything like that. So, and that's a reaction, obviously, to what Netflix has been doing, Disney has been doing, etc. So you're going to see things like that happening, but then you're going to see more extreme things happening as well that really disrupts social cohesion. Because if you see the way that people have responded to the Roe v. Wade repeal, as an example, I mean, that's a clear breakdown in social cohesion. I mean, you have tons of people who, if you put them into a room and said, thrash it out, you can come back a week later, I can guarantee you they still wouldn't have reached any sort of, consensus or any kind of compromise whatsoever.
Well, I think a big part of that also is that I feel like we're even focusing on the wrong things.
Oh, without a doubt.
Like we're just going, there's so many different things in play, and we're going straight into abortion, yes or no. And it's more complicated than that, man. I mean, this actually goes back to the whole thing I mentioned earlier about the fast food culture with relationships. Like if people are just running around screwing everyone under the moon and all these things, and not having any kind of moral decency or anything, and the sort of the approach that has actually kept us going for millions and millions of fucking years, if people are throwing that out of the window, well, of course there's going to be a higher popularity for abortions and things like that. I mean, this is how can I say this? Because there's a real complication here as well, right? Which is so inconvenient for modern life. Like even our approach to sex in general, because it's something that gives us pleasure. I mean, it's a great thing, right? But the thing of it is that it's like every great thing in nature, in life, it always has a price. Okay. And that we're kind of cheating nature every time. And I feel like energetically speaking, this puts us at a really massive disadvantage, which I suppose for someone who's not really like very spiritual, they might not see that side of it. But to me, it's like we're told to have it as much as we can because it's good for us. It's this and that, and that's not healthy, right? I don't think having that kind of gratification all the time is very good for you. In fact, I believe one of the reasons why I myself personally became so obese in the first place was because well, let's put it this way, right? I'm going on a little bit of a tangent here, but just a little bit of clarification for anyone else to understand. I don't have an addictive personality, but I have an obsessive personality. I've never struggled with alcohol, cigarettes. I've never even become a smoker, weed, drugs. I've had everything, obviously, but I've never struggled with it. But when it comes to sex and these kind of relations, that's always been one where I'm like a little bit like a moth going into the light kind of situation, or flames even. And for me, the time where I lost the most control of my life was the time where I had the most accessibility to that, and I could easily go like 5-6 times a day, and then I'd be happy and whatever. But in that time, I became weak. Now there's the scientific element to that, where obviously I will have become very much deficient in things like zinc, for example, which you mentioned earlier, which I absolutely had the symptoms of that at the time, because you do lose zinc every time you jizz, basically. But
every time you bust a nut.
Yeah, exactly. And but then there's also the mental aspect of it, is that you're comfortable. You've got the most pleasurable thing ever in front of you. It's like eating ice cream how many times a day. But then it's kind of like you lose control. You lose the edge of working hard and earning your dopamine release, and rather just like going straight to the thing. And this is why cocaine's also a big problem. It's like instant dopamine, but you've not done anything to earn that, and that's why it's addicting. And if you think about it, when it concerns the subject of sex and abortions and things like that, I think that our approach to it's like we're having sex, but there's, besides pleasure, there's no reason for it. Whereas as far as nature is concerned, there's very big reasons for you partaking in something like that. Okay, so now it's like we're almost cheating nature. And I'm not saying that we should stop doing it or whatever, but I think the part that we now need to focus on is who we share those experiences with. That is extremely important. That is something so special, because think of it like this, right? Every person listening to this, I hope people can relate to it in some degree, but the very first person that you have a sexual relationship with, doesn't matter if that person's a fucking asshole or if it was just a one-off, but there is a certain connection formed there which you can never quite get over. Now, whether this person ends up being a girlfriend or a boyfriend, or if it's just a one-off, doesn't matter. But there is something that happens when you do that for the first time. And I think that there is a very high spiritual and energetic thing concerning that, which we're completely overlooking. And it's almost like everything after the first person, this especially applies to women, I think, but everything after the very first person that you've been with, it becomes like you're almost trying to now replicate that same feeling. But the further you go, the more dim that light within you gets. And I think this is why it's extremely important. That this is going to sound so fucking against everything I have said for many years, but I think this is why it is important. And this is actually it's a precious thing to actually save those experiences for someone who means something to you. If you can. Some people, unfortunately, they get abused at a young age, and there's all these things, which is extremely unfortunate. But it's almost like, if your first experience doesn't work out, then you are now somehow damaged, and you will pass that damage on to someone else. And then it's like a vicious cycle that everyone is constantly passing their damage onto someone else for their first time. And we are now completely fucked. And I feel like that, culturally speaking, it's almost like being damaged is the norm. Being emotionally and romantically detached and damaged is the norm. And now it's also almost coming to the point where it's acceptable. And to be honest with you, I never saw any of this until very recently, but it's been some very big conclusions. And in my world, it makes sense. And obviously, it's complicated. In action, these things are a lot harder to pull off. But I think that there's a real importance to more than anything at this time in the human history, us embracing the elements of loyalty, compassion, understanding, communication, and not sharing the most private and the most sort of intimate things of us with just anyone.
Yeah, I think you make a couple of very interesting points there. I definitely, I hadn't actually thought about it from a naturalistic perspective. I mean, I am pro-choice. I said this on the podcast before. I think I'm open to a conversation about term limits. I don't think it's unreasonable to say 15 weeks or 20, probably 21 weeks is about right. But I'm certainly pro-choice. But you made an extremely profound point there about the fact that in nature it's for procreation. It's not for pleasure. So if you're cheating nature, eventually that is gonna catch up on you. That's. I mean, one thing that you can say without a shadow of a doubt when you talk about people that are damaged, I don't think that society has been this damaged in a very, very long time. And the problem with the damage that you see in society, Naz and I spoke about it too. It's like you essentially are now people are now encouraged to amplify their damage, on social media. So, particularly stuff like TikTok is essentially an amplification channel. For every single shred of narcissism and other sort of mental disorder that you have, that you now want to normalize and expect that if other people not only don't embrace that, but don't actively encourage you to delve further into the abyss of whatever despair has wrapped itself around you, those people are wrong and they're Nazis and they're the worst people on the face of the earth. And that's the one thing that I'll never be able to wrap my head around when it comes to modern society. Like you were talking about loyalty, we're talking about things that in modern society should be virtuous. Humility should be a virtuous thing. But nowadays, when you talk about that sort of thing, then you get accused of a dog, issuing a dog whistle to the far right and stuff like that by some of these fucking lunatics. It doesn't compute to me. It's like how can you talk about a movement that's supposedly based on love, but anything to do with love you seem to completely shun. Forgiveness, understanding, as you say, compassion. It just doesn't makes no sense to me. It feels like either the English language has changed, and I've not been privy to some of the changes that have been announced. All society has gone in a down a wrong path, and I've happened to think it's the latter.
Yeah, I think so too. And by the wrong path, I think a good way of describing that would be us separating from the very source that made us what we are.
Yeah.
And that source being nature, basically.
Have you been watching a lot of Liver King videos?
I haven't watched any, like
he's actually not a bad dude. He's
besides being jacked up to fuck and using technology to record his like super primitive ways. Yeah.
He's 45 years old and he is absolutely shredded, but he's a pretty interesting guy. Before you and I spoke, I was watching his podcast episode on Impulsive, and I was like, he's actually a dude I could hang out with and have a pretty good time with.
Yeah, I think the thing of it is, like, you could have a very valid point in society nowadays, but you're gonna have to be pretty outlandish to actually be heard, and that's an unfortunate consequence of, again, this whole social media thing again. But back to the point of the abortions thing, which we mentioned as well. I feel like there's something very troubling about that for me as well. Is that I am, I guess, to an extent, I am pro-choice as well, but I also totally get the other side of it as well.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I think that, I don't know. Yeah, I think I'm thinking too hard.
Well, the thing is,
I'm thinking way too fucking hard.
I can't remember who said it, but
it's a tough thing.
I think someone said exactly the right thing the other day. It's like, you in order to be able to even start to address the question, you need to accept that there's people that hold differing points of view to you who are perfectly reasonable, perfectly sane, possibly had something happen in their past, or there is something influencing their way of thinking, and to them their opinion is completely and utterly valid. And that's true of a great many things that divide society. Maybe you've come from a place where, like, you think about, there's a very extreme example. You think about a place like China where forced abortions are the norm. Think about the kid who comes from a family where he's seen his mom dragged out by the police or dragged out by the military, knowing my baby brother or my baby sister is about to be aborted. Think about that person's view on abortion. So there's a lot of things that influence it, and it's like all issues in society. It's not just it's no linear. It's not a linear decision. It's not like, well, I'm evil, so therefore I'm pro-life, or I'm good, so therefore I'm pro-choice. Whatever. And again, same whatever the issue is.
Yeah, I think so too. And one of the very strangest things about it was that there's always the thing of my body, my choice. Which I can understand that. I am, generally speaking, very much for people being in control of things. But
not when it comes to vaccines, though. When it's my body, my choice, but when it's a vaccine, no, you have to take it or you're a Nazi.
That's exactly the point I was about to make.
Yeah,
because and oddly enough, when it concerns abortions, that does actually kind of concern another person too.
Of course.
Whereas with the vaccines, it's like that concerns no one. We now know for a fact that it makes zero difference to anyone else whether you've had it or not.
Yeah.
So why is it going to be forced down every single person? So it's like, and it's like one size fits all as well. So think about it like this. I don't know, like 4'9" girl will be 20-year-old girl will be receiving the same medication as a guy like Eddie Hall, for example. And it's like, how the fuck does this work? And it's a scary thing. Listen, I mean, and the saddest thing about that to me was the fact that we all went kind of like, oh, well, if you didn't do this, then you deserve to die. If you did this, then you deserve to die. It's like us just completely losing track of anything. It's like, first of all, as a form of illness, it's a gamble for every single person concerned. Why? Because it reacted differently for everyone. Okay, it doesn't matter what your lifestyle choices were, whether you had the vaccine or whether you hadn't had the vaccine. It affected every single person differently. It affected me differently all 3 times that I had it, right? The last time I didn't even know I had it. And the thing of it was that we kind of got into this headspace of where, okay, if you've, people who've not received this, you'll soon die and you'll find out. And that to me is really sad, because it's almost like you're so concerned about being right that in your mind you're justifying the death of another human being just so you're in the right team, just so that virtue signaling thing. And that is so wrong. And I have to blame some of the other people for the same thing as well. It's like, oh, you've received it, you're gonna get myocarditis and you're gonna fucking die now.
Yeah.
And that's not cool either. Obviously I myself, I never had it, and this is the first I've actually publicly said that. But I don't judge people for doing this, because this is a scary situation. But what I want you to do is to be compassionate and understand that corporations are hugely taking advantage of this situation, and try not to act emotionally. Your emotions are your fucking enemy, your biggest enemy when it comes to a situation like this. And I know I say be compassionate. I think that's a different thing. Being emotional means reacting in panic and not thinking of the other side, not thinking of the other person. It's like when you're in a relationship and you're in the middle of a argument / debate, And rather than try to reason and see things from the other person's perspective, you just lash out and project in a negative way at the other person. That's not a healthy thing. That's
I described it the other day. I described it the other day as being led by your ungoverned emotions. Because I think being emotional, the right emotions channeled in the right way can lead to a lot of positive things, including compassion. But I think that when your emotions are completely ungoverned, as the majority of people are, I think that's very dangerous. And one of the things that I touched on, I'm keen to get your take on this. I don't know whether I'm the only one who's noticed it. As a matter of fact, I know I'm not, because like I said on the part of the news rant segment that I spoke about this on, Jimmy Dore recently did something about it as well. There's a lot of people that seem to have this increasing flirtation and a raised sense of comfort with the idea of a civil war or some sort of civil conflict. And I think that to me is the most dangerous thing that I'm seeing in society right now. Great example being the two tweet combo that Alex Skolnick fired off straight after the Roe v. Wade appeal. Blah blah blah. This is gonna be war. And that was then echoed by a lot of other people, talking about, that scumbag Carlos Maza talking about how violence is the language of protest. It's time we start speaking that language again. And you look at it and you go, just think about North America, the number of firearms that are in that country. If there were to be a civil war, can you imagine the level of bloodshed that there would be in that place? And then you look, and I love Testament, and I think Alex Skolnick is an incredible guitarist. So it pains me to say this, but like I said on the episode of the podcast I was talking about this on, do you think that he's going to be on the front lines with his AR-15 mowing down the pro-lifers? No, that dude's going to be fucking long gone. When the buildings are burning and people are dying, he's going to be gone. So is fucking Carlos Maza, and so is everybody that has this flirtation with it. And I genuinely feel there's a palpable sense of people that are almost encouraging it. And it really started. I feel like COVID placed our collective psychosis under a microscope. And then since then, it's gotten worse and worse. You had George Floyd, that really sort of revved it up. Now this has come up. In the background, there's all these other things happening that people have their eye completely off the ball on. One of which being, we're potentially sleepwalking into complete and utter economic and financial meltdown. We're potentially sleepwalking into a fucking war with Russia. There's all sorts of horrific things which, frankly, the politicians should have their eye on, but equally us as people, and we don't.
Yeah.
And when things like this crop up, the timing of it, I also find so bizarre. It's like, there's potential talk now of water shortages in America, blackouts all over the place. It's like,
it's almost like when a band does a press release for an album or something, and then they release one teaser, like piece of the album cover, and then the next thing they release the music video, and then they release another it feels like a campaign of some sort. Somehow. So then, without sounding too much conspiratorial, obviously, but that's kind of what it feels like to me, which is more. And
then the Roe v. Wade thing happens, and people are yelling, "Vote for the Democrats so that they can turn this around." It's like, are you fucking stupid? They control the House, they control the Senate. The sitting president is a Democrat, and they didn't do anything to stop it. So again, you start stepping back. You go, okay, well, why is this happening then? And then you start putting together all the other things that we spoke about now, and it's like, well, the timing of it seems awfully strange, and so things continue to progress. People start fanning the flames of a civil war, civil conflict, and my message in all of that was just, maybe I'm being conspiratorial, but at the end of the day, back to your point about how to treat other people. Don't fall for the low resolution bullshit thinking that so many of these mentally unhinged, unstable lunatics are parroting on social media 24/7. And it's frightening to me, the kind of mass psychosis that you see when people fall for this, and how fired up and how uh, they sort of filled with this almost religious zealotry for whatever cause they're in, they believe in now, and then the next week the cause changes. Boom, done with that shit. No more. I'm proud to be vaccinated. Now it's the Ukraine, and then the next one. All right, get that Ukraine flag off your Facebook profile pic. Now it's support pro-choice.
Yeah,
And
it's that I
so it
support
goes
the
on.
current thing
Yeah.
meme, isn't it? But the thing is, Jackie, I think the problem with I think a lot of things going on, and I'm speaking from personal experience of viewing people and interacting with them, even if they've actually been on the same page as me. I feel like a society has done a great job of making people feel unheard and unappreciated. Like everyone, I mean, I still get this now. I mean, this is it's a point of gratitude for me wholeheartedly. But to me, it's like, for example, when I see people wearing Trivax merch, like the last 4 or 5 concerts that I've been to, I've seen people wearing our t-shirts, which to me is fucking beautiful. That is amazing. And one of our friends, she actually sent us a picture of these people she saw at Hellfest just this weekend wearing Trivax shirts. And I'm like,
Awesome.
that is great. But why is it great? Is because as much as obviously there's the whole thing of an artist and it's knowing that you've got support, more than anything, when I try to dissect my own psychology, is that it's knowing that people know we exist, right? And I think that the majority of people living on this world right now, there's a sense of feeling like because there's this whole celebrity culture out there, obviously, and like TikTok and social media influencers and things like that. I feel like a lot of people kind of feel like they're unheard and no one knows of them, and I feel like, and this is not maybe the only reason for it, but probably something that plays into the minds of all of the school shootings, for example, that happened, which is an extremely unfortunate thing, and it saddens me. But I think it's kind of like that. Everyone wants to be heard. Everyone wants to leave a mark somehow. And I feel that this goes back to the thing of us having to work on ourselves first more than anything, rather than constantly trying to change the world, constantly trying to do this and that. I mean, I know people, for example, who like they've not had the vaccine, but then their approach is like the opposite of mine. They're like, oh, when the truth comes out, you will all know, like this, and it's like, listen, calm down. That's it. I get that there's like a lot of like bullying that's happened, and it's probably happened on behalf of people who probably are actually good-hearted. They were just a little foolish and fell into the cycles of these things that were created somehow within the communications, mass communication. But just learn to be a little more compassionate. Okay, that at the end of the day, that's your choice. And there's this thing of like we're constantly trying to control other people. Like I was talking to some guy yesterday. Wasn't there like a whole like uproar recently about this Olympic guy in the UK? He did a TV interview and he was wearing shoes, and then he wasn't wearing any socks with the shoes. And like the whole comment section was like losing their shit about how it was disgusting that he wasn't wearing socks and that his shoes probably fucking smell like shit. And I'm like, why do you people care? Why are you constantly like trying to fucking, to me, that's like I feel like it's like some kind of a validation syndrome or even lack thereof, because we want to be heard. We want to feel like people out there know that we exist somehow. And this is like, and that I feel that need for feeling heard and for feeling and for someone noticing that we exist is I think that might actually be the thing that is keeping us attached and plugged into the matrix. And I think once you let go of that, once you no longer give a shit that anyone hears you or that anyone knows where you are and then that you are being watched, then you can connect with what truly matters. And I think that's when your values will also align in the best way they possibly could, away from the bullshit of the world.
And I would say, as a supplement to that, you mentioned, being on different sides of a coin on a particular argument or a particular topic. Whatever side you find yourself on, don't become the thing you hate. If you chose not to take the vaccine because you felt you were being bullied, don't then do what the folks that were telling you that you were killing granny because you weren't getting the vaccine did, and start pointing at them. Well, when you drop down dead of a heart attack, I'm gonna laugh my head off. Don't do any of that shit.
No.
Listen, brother, I know you've got a 9 p.m. curfew, so one final question. What's happening next on your podcast? And also, have you got an idea in mind of when the Trivax record is going to be out?
Sure. Well, first of all, man, thank you very much for having me. This was it was a real fucking blast. It was nice to talk about everything. Yeah, we started on Rammstein and then unlocked all the secrets to life.
Which pretty much is what we always do.
I know, right? I love it. I very much appreciate that. Yeah. So with the Iblis manifestations, I mean, for me, I've been enjoying the heck out of that. It's like for me personally, it's like the best idea since sliced bread, because even though the podcast cost me money to do and everything, and cost me time, and you know what it's like to run a podcast better than I do, but it's one of them things. It's really enjoyable, and I feel like it's allowed for a way of connection and communication with not only my own audience, but also that of everyone else who I interview, that I otherwise feel like never would have had through just music and just music related interviews. And I fucking love that. I feel like that's exactly the kind of thing I want to be involved with. To me, it's not all just about like vinyls and musics and things like that. That's great. It's a huge part of my life, but I feel like this is really, like, I feel like at home, like I'm living up to my purpose through this one activity, at least.
So for me, one of the biggest things about it is it's a way for me to catch up with my friends. I genuinely, I and that's kind of where I think also the best episodes come from. Is you and I have done 4 episodes together now. But when you get to know somebody and you've built a friendship up with them, you start having relaxed and very open conversations. And I've counted myself so fortunate, with some of the friends that I've made, doing this podcast, including you, Mike, Evan, Matt. I certainly consider Brock from Panzerfaust a friend, Nas. So, that's kind of the best part of doing this now, is that I get to still meet new and interesting people, but also I'm fucking busy. So it's a regular stopgap for me to be able to have a beer and talk to a bro.
Mm-hmm. No, absolutely, man. I agree with you there. And I think it's a fucking fantastic thing. And to that point, I think we literally just did what you said. I think, and I'll be honest with you as well. When we started this one, I was in a really like dark, pissy mood. I was like ready to fucking go, because I just had that gym session and I've been dealing with my own inner bitch, but it worked out really well, because I think a lot of the things that, funnily enough, I've been thinking prior to the podcast ended up manifesting their way through. So grateful for that. So thanks again for having me. And also to the topic of Trivax. Should I give a date?
Come on.
Okay, then. I think we'll be looking at something like either at the end of this year or early next year, but people will be hearing it sooner than they think. So, fuck yeah.
Awesome.
And we're gonna wipe the slate clean once and for all.
Badass. I'm thoroughly looking forward to that. I'm gonna hold you to the song premiere thing.
That's a really cool idea. Yeah.
Well, I spoke to somebody from a different record label about another band that I rave about on this podcast an awful lot, whose new record I've had for a period of time now. And he actually was going to message me and say we should put the first song that we released for that record out on your podcast. So
would you have it like at the beginning before the interview starts, like where you normally have demos of the week and stuff? Yeah. I think that's a pretty cool idea.
I'll do that as like this is my brother Shayan's new tune, blah blah blah. And then afterwards, I go, "Fuck it, that sucks." Right, let's get on with the show. Well, I mean, I told you I've heard the stuff that you've let me hear is fantastic. I think people need to brace themselves for what they're going to hear, because I think it's such a huge leap forward for the band. I'm super excited about hearing the rest, and I'm really excited about hearing what people think when they do hear it, because I think people are going to be blown away.
Awesome. I appreciate hearing that, man. Yeah. Wait till you hear the rest of it. I know what I've sent you so far, even though that was still considerably a while ago. But yeah, wait till you hear the whole thing. Is fucking, I think, personally speaking, it's good. You know, like I listen to it regularly now, next to other releases that I genuinely and thoroughly enjoy. And it's like I have a natural inclination to want to come back to it. And that to me is as good a sign as any, you know, that I enjoy it, because I'm an asshole when it comes to music. I hate everything. So and I think that's always a really good sign. And I'm, you know what, I'm excited for people to hear it too. So yeah, I think we've got a very interesting and exciting chapter ahead of us. But whilst we approach that, I'm grateful that I've had the opportunity to have all of these conversations with yourself, and you know, and the support that you've given the band. You know, I've been a listener of Into the Necrosphere for what, 2 years now, and the amount of times I've heard you name drop Trivax, you know, I do very much always appreciate it. You know, so
that's cool, it's a big pleasure. And next time we speak, hopefully it's an in person. As I said, I need to get my act together, but I know what I need to get. So depends on what bonus day looks like, which is July 31st. I've got some hi-fi shit that needs to come in as well. So I don't know how close to the bone I'll be cutting that. All right, my brother, keep it real on the streets. I'll see you soon.
Sounds cool, man.
Take care.
Later.
Bye-bye.
Ha ha!
You just heard a track called Death to the Empire of the World. It's taken from the debut Trivax record, Sin, which came out back in 2016. Obviously, Shayan and I spoke about the forthcoming Trivax record. Like I said when I spoke to him, I've heard 4 tracks off of that album, and all 4 were absolutely superb. So very, very excited about eventually being able to share one of those songs with you, and very excited about getting to hear the whole thing. But in the meantime, I just wanted to say thank you once again to Shayan for coming on the show. Had a blast catching up with him as always, and I hope that you guys enjoyed that as much as I did recording it. Now, from hotly anticipated upcoming releases to the shockingly overlooked, and I did mention at the top of the show that I had somehow managed to miss this when it came out on December the 14th last year. I speak, of course, of Orbe Noir by Orob. A bit of background on this band, first and foremost. They are a 4-piece hailing from various towns and locations across France. They've been around since 2006, and prior to this release, they had put out 2 EPs in 2011 and 2013, respectively, dubbed Departure and Into the Room of Perpetual Echoes. They are also inexplicably unsigned, so much like Trivax, you can add them to the ever-growing list of bands that record labels have been and most likely will continue to sleep on. Now, that should not stop you, however, the enlightened fan, from checking them out, particularly as Orbe Noir is available as a name-your-price buy on Bandcamp right now. That is true at the time of me saying this. I don't know whether things will have changed, but either way, you can currently go there and name your price, and man, are you ever going to hammer that buy button as soon as the opening riff of the record's first track, Spectral, kicks in. It's a dark, grinding, atmospheric black metal masterpiece that reminds me instantly of bands like Cold Cell, Farsot, and even a little of Deathspell Omega. But what makes Orob, in my view, a very distinct proposition from those bands is the frequent and the highly effective flirtation that they have with progressive and avant-garde elements, and then also the way in which they deploy clean vocals. Now, obviously, clean vocals in black metal is nothing new, but I think the way that they do this is done in a very unique, very interesting way. And the great thing about it is, whether it be the progressive side of what they do, the avant-garde, the clean vocals, at no point does it ever detract from the dark atmosphere of this record, which is clearly what they were going for from the get-go. Now, another standout for me about this album is the way in which every song dovetails onto the next. I've spoken many times before about lazy track listing, lazy track sequencing, I should say, being a pet hate of mine. But I think Orob have that aspect absolutely dialed into a fine art here. And, whether it's injecting some fresh pace at just the right time through a song like Breaking of the Bonds, I believe, or building up to one of the record's high points on The Wanderer, they absolutely knock it out of the park. Ultimately, they also save the best for last with a 1-2 knockout of Ethereal and The Great Fall, 2 tracks that close out the record in a dramatic and absolutely brilliant fashion. And they kind of leave you wondering how on earth the hour that you just spent listening to the record managed to pass by as quickly as it did. Now, like I said when I posted about this on the socials, Orbe Noir is, in my view, elite-level modern black metal. It is unrelentingly brilliant for the entirety of its duration. It's well-produced, it's brilliantly performed, it's soulfully composed, and I genuinely regret only getting around to hearing it now, because I think if I had heard it back in December of last year, it for sure would have been one of my top releases of 2022. Get it now on Bandcamp. Be generous when it comes to naming your price. And as always, don't forget to let them know who sent you. In the meantime, here's something for you to chew on. One of my favorite tracks on the record. This is Ethereal. Ethereal by Orob off of the fantastic Aube Noir. Like I said, available on Bandcamp right now as a name your price buy. And these guys keep the flag flying high for French black metal, that is for sure. I mean, not that that nation is short of great stuff coming out of there. Obviously, Cold Cell was one of my favorite albums of last year. This year, we've had Blood Aus Nord, we've had Death Spell Omega. Those are the first two French releases that come to mind, but there are plenty more there. Let's find out a little bit more about what else may be coming up in the very near future by magically whisking ourselves away to Metal Storm as I begin another installment of one of my infamous, increasingly notorious news rants. And we start off with Imperial Triumphant unveiling Tower of Glory, City of Shame, the second single off of their next full-length offering, Spirit of Ecstasy. And it says here it has premiered online in the form of an official video clip directed and edited by Steve Blanco. Imperial Triumphant, as I said when I listened to this first single off of the record, not a band that I am hugely enamored with, unlike many that I know. So again, I know very, very well that I am probably alone in my views there. But I did like that first single, and I am more than happy to give this new single a spin as well. So let's hear what they have gotten up to on Tower of Glory, City of Shame.
Synchronous plants, beholden to decades, pillars of the earth, mediated outwardly in numeric fashion, extensions of mankind.
For those of you guys watching this on YouTube, I don't know whether this was with artistic direction from the band themselves or whether Steve Blanco was just doing his own thing, but someone's been watching an awful lot of Rob Zombie music videos, because if you had told me that was a Rob Zombie music video, I would not believe you. No, I said not 3 times there. That sounded like a moron. But you guys know, you understand what I mean. You'd have a hard time telling somebody if they just kind of a blind viewing that is not a Rob Zombie music video, albeit with a guy who's got a very heavy European accent doing the narrative on top. But anyway, let's get back to it. So, it's not bad. I get what they're going for. I'm always a fan of dissonance and discordance, but in order for discordance to work, there has to be some sort of payoff. So the question is going to be, when does the payoff come? Because if you drag this out too long, it just turns to navel-gazing wank, really. And not similar music, or not entirely similar music, but Dillinger Escape Plan, I think, were a band that knew that you could only do the mathcore and the schizo riffs and all the crazy discordant stuff for so long before you need to throw a hook at the audience, keep them engaged, and then sort of have them hanging on for the next payoff. And that's what makes those payoffs so special. Question is there going to be payoff here? So I'll give it another minute or so. The track is 8 minutes long, so it could very well be that the payoff comes much, much later. But like I said, let's hear whether there's something to keep me wanting to stay listening for more than the next 60 seconds. So I'm a bit lukewarm to this, more so than I was with that first single. I can hear when that woman singing comes in, maybe they can, maybe that's the hook. It's not enough of a hook to keep me interested. And again, I can see a song like this just meandering on for, the next 6-7 minutes and not really ever kind of going anywhere, never taking you anywhere where you sort of feel that, gut punch of, something fucking badass has just happened. That Orob song that I played earlier, that had that in spades, especially towards the end of that song. And like I said, there always has to be that moment, that kind of peak, whether it's a breakdown, whether it's something interesting they do with their vocals, whether it's something interesting they do with melody, that the greatest songs for me always have that. This sounds like it just could be a little bit too artsy-fartsy. Conversely, it could be one of those bands that I just don't get, and one day I am going to sit listening to music and, stumble upon an Imperial Triumphant song, and it's just going to get its hooks into me, and I'm going to love it. That has happened too. So I might live to eat my words on this, but so far, especially based on how much great stuff has come out this year so far, and how much great stuff is still to come, I am not so sure that I'm quite down with it just yet. Speaking of great stuff, one that I don't think will fall amongst the year's greatest, but again, you never know. Soulfly have dropped Filth Upon Filth, their new single. To promote the release of their forthcoming record, Totem, Soulfly premiere a Costin Chirano created music video for another single called Filth Upon Filth. Totem drops on August the 5th. Via, I believe, Nuclear Blast Records. So let us give Totem a quick spin. By the way, is it just me, or has Nuclear Blast changed their logo? I would imagine that has happened in the wake of this Atomic Fire business. I would love to actually get the dirt on what happened there, because I know Marcus sold Nuclear Blast and then went off, started his own label, called it Atomic Fire, went and signed a whole bunch of bands that had previously been on Nuclear Blast, including Meshuggah. So clearly poached a couple of big names away. I think Amorphous was one of them as well. So I'm very curious just to know exactly what happened there. But anyway, let's listen to Filth Upon Filth. I've heard things that I dislike a lot more. It's not anywhere near as terrible as Get in the Ring by Amon Amarth. But I will say this. I think that the Max Cavalera of 1991 could have sucked something more creative out of his pinky than what he's put out there. I mean, that is pretty bog-standard riffing. I didn't pay much attention to the vocals. I would expect at some point I'll hear a spirited chant of "fuck all your bullshit, fuck all your bullshit, fuck all your politics." But the thing is, I also concede Soulfly is just not aimed at people like me anymore. Most likely not aimed at anyone that listens to this podcast, which is fair enough. Max has been responsible for a great many, awesome and influential releases over the years. Let him do what he wants to do. I don't necessarily have to like it. I'm pretty sure there's a lot of people that do. Shadow Flag have disbanded. After 10 years and 4 studio album releases, British black metal crew Shadow Flag have decided to disband. The 5-piece from Cheltenham also confirmed their final show for September the 17th, 2022 at Scruffy Murphy's in Birmingham. The band statement reads, "Take one sip from this glass, let the years come flooding past. Shadow Flag has been a central part of our lives for over 10 years now, and from the beginning we always said that we would know when the time had come, and now sadly it has. We can look back on all the fantastic memories, all the great shows we've played, all the miles we've traveled, and all the wonderful people we met along the way, and I can honestly say that none of us regret 1 second of it. Being in the band is a blessing, and it allows us to experience a unity and creative cohesion that is so unique in life. I always find it hilariously funny when a black metal band or black metal men use the word blessing in the way that they've done it here. From whom is it a blessing? Anyway, Shadow Flag has given us that in abundance. We want to thank those who have become part of this, whether by coming to shows, buying merch, listening to our music. We want to thank the promoters and all the bands that we've played with. We want to thank Ajit of Hellfire Studios for being the man to capture our sounds. We want to thank Rebecca for the years she dedicated to managing an unruly bunch of idiots. And we want to thank you for caring about Shadow Flag and reading this post. I was never hugely into them. However, that was not because I didn't like them. I just didn't really know their music all that well. When I did get into it was when I think Rick Eaglestone forwarded on a release to me. And what I heard, I really liked. So... But, I'm not sure what they have or what kind of tipped them over the edge. I do think for a lot of folks, they start bands when they're young. They realize they're not going to be able to make a living out of it. And then, you either kind of get to the crossroads of having to make a subsistence living out of music, which, let's be honest, a lot of people don't necessarily want. Or you're never going to be able to take the band to the next stage. So who knows? Maybe they got to that point. But, rest in peace, Shadow Flag. Testament released music video for Curse of Osiris. Bay Area thrash metal icons Testament have released a music video for Curse of Osiris, taken from their most recent album, 2020's Titans of Creation. Superb song. I'm not going to go through I'm actually not going to watch the music video now because I suspect it may be flagged if I do. Although that's it, fuck it. I doubt that it will. If it does, then this part's going to be muted out anyway. So you'll have to go over to Spotify for the uncensored version. But I like Titans of Creation very much. I thought it was a great record. Some of the songs felt a little bit long-winded, but I mean, for the most part, it was top-notch. And as I've spoken about it on a couple of my last episodes, frontmen and vocalists that still sound at the top of their game. Chuck Billy sounds absolutely fantastic. And you take it in the context of the man's health issues. I mean, he had brain cancer, for Christ's sake. And he still sounds, whether on record or live, like an absolute beast. So let's give Curse of Osiris a quick listen. Most of you who follow the show are probably fans of Testament, but if you're not, you should be ashamed of yourself, and this song, I think, is going to do enough to convince you to, at the very least, go back and check out Titans of Creation, because it really is superb. I love that little black metal flourish they throw in there. I think it sounds really, really cool. And I really like the... I just think every single person on this song is in a league of their own. Look, I've got my issues with Skolnick D when it comes to politics, but there's no doubt that guy is one of the greatest guitarists going. So is Eric, to be honest, Eric Peterson. And then you've got Gene Hoglan on the drums. Would I say dubious? That's not the right choice of words, but I'm not sure that Dave Lombardo can fill that seat, quite honestly. I think what Gene has brought to that band, especially over the course of the last, say, 2-3 records, is fantastic. And if you guys know some of my pet hates, one of them being those boring, especially when it comes to thrash bands, those very monotonous, boring, tedious drums, that just doesn't have much going for it. There's no fills. It's just kind of this one beat, like da 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 da. And Gene kind of uses that as a baseline, but he adds so much to it, just flair all over the place. And I just don't know if Dave has it in him to replicate that, and I do think their music benefits from it greatly. We'll see what happens when the new record finally comes out. Also, I will just say it for the record, I will try my damnedest to get Chuck on the show. Absolute dream of mine to talk to that guy. If I think of dream guests that I have right now, because I've already had a fair few of them on, and let me just say once again, that happened thanks to a great many people that listen to this podcast who always make sure that they reference the show anytime they buy anything. Keep sharing the links, keep sharing the posts that I put out. I cannot tell you how appreciative I am of that. If I say it a lot, it's because I can't say it enough. So thank you very, very much. And together, hopefully, we're going to make the Chuck Billy appearance on Into the Necrosphere reality. But back to what I was saying, dream guests right now: Chuck, Attila of Mayhem. I would love to have Necro Butcher on as well. Who else is kind of key people? I'd love to have Mortis on, but I don't think he'll ever be on the podcast. Morgan of Marduk. I've spoken to him twice before. I would love to get him on. I think I have, hopefully, an opportunity to do that when they put out their new record, but we'll see. And then I'm trying to think who else. Tom G. Warrior, so that I can say to him, remember that guy that you blocked on Facebook for posting a picture of the steak he was grilling one afternoon? Well, surprise, motherfucker. Yeah. Great stuff from Testament. Make sure that you check out that record if you haven't done yet. It is fucking excellent. Dismember signed with Nuclear Blast Records. Re-signed, they should say, because they actually were signed with Nuclear Blast Records. They have never been a band that I was hugely, massively into. I'm trying to think. There were a couple of Dismember records that I liked. But I have first heard them on Death Is Just the Beginning 3. The infamous video compilation that had Hypocrisy, it had Conqueror, a very cool Conqueror song, I should say. It had Mortification, which was one of the fucking worst things ever, but, when you grew up in the Bible Belt of South Africa, everyone tried to push that like it's this great alternative to Deicide, and it's even heavier. It's like, no, it's not. It's trash. It had Amorphous, Gorefest, but the band for me on that compilation was Sinister. They had the Leviathan music video, Leviathan coming off of Diabolical Summoning, which I think is one of the greatest death metal records ever recorded. And it just overshadowed everything else, especially a band like Dismember. It made, at that time, it made a band like Dismember just sound like Bush League Billies. But anyways, let's go on. King's X guitarist facing medical issues, European tour cancelled. Very sad to read that. It's with great regret that King's X have announced that they'll be forced to cancel their upcoming engagements in Europe this autumn due to an unforeseen medical issue with their guitarist Ty Tabor. This doesn't change the 3 shows of the band in July, as they will be the last ones before the treatments. Anytime you have to take time off for treatment, it's not a good thing. So best of luck to Ty Tabor. I hope he feels better soon. Man, thank you so much, by the way, to the folks that came out the woodwork and steered me in the right direction as far as what to check out when it came to King's X music. A lot of love for King's X. amongst the Into the Necrosphere massive as well, I should say. Which, it shouldn't surprise me, because I think you guys are all a pretty open-minded bunch of folk, which is why I'm never too concerned about having a band on here, or having a guest on that's, outside the necro purview. But, yeah, man, a lot of you guys seem to be really into that band and very psyched that I had discovered them. And I really loved that last song that I heard, so... Okay, Fallujah present Embrace Oblivion single. Will I, won't I? I will admit that I am somewhat prejudgmental. I don't even think that's a word. Prejudiced. There we go. It is Sunday night and I'm feeling old and tired. And as you guys also hear, my voice is a little bit more raspy than normal. It's because I woke up last week Tuesday with the worst fucking stomach bug. And the heaving was so violent that it fucked my throat up a little bit. So anyways, that graphic detail aside, I'm a little prejudiced here. I didn't like that last Fallujah record whatsoever, which was a shame because I loved the previous one, and I kind of felt like they were a band that had the potential to really sort of be one of the leading lights of newer death metal bands. And then they decided to go soft on old Jackson. But it says here, Embrace Oblivion, the newest single from Fallujah's next full-length installment, Imperial, has premiered online in the form of an official lyric video. Tech death metalers will unleash the upcoming music output on September the 9th, 2022. Commenting on the single, vocalist Kyle Schaefer says, Embrace Oblivion is about accepting change on a personal level and trusting in your ability to adapt and grow from events that may seem destructive in the short term. Sometimes we need to break down our own established structures in order to build something better in their place. Have they done something better than the album they released previously that broke down all of their credibility and all of the love that I had for them? Let's find out. I'm not mad at that. Not mad at all. I think the production sounds a little bit too clinical. It really sounds very digitalized, or digitized, sorry. Jesus Christ, I'm starting to sound like fucking Brendan Sharp with the way I'm raping the English language on today's news rant. But anyway, it sounds a little overly digitized, I think, if you guys know what I mean. Yeah, there's something about it that I like, and I like the contrast between the heavy and the mellow part. The sour with the sweet. It's clearly technically these guys are on a different level. And then that chorus that I just cut us off in midway through, that sounds like it's pretty cool as well. Now again, is this going to be something I go back and listen to every single day? No. But if I compare Fallujah to a band like Rivers of Nile, which Rivers of Nile I really liked as well on their first couple of records, and again, they turned into a absolute steaming pile of horse turd. This to me does far more for me than anything off of that last Rivers of Nile train wreck ever could. And frankly, this does more for me than that last Decapitated train smash would do as well. So let's give it another 60 seconds. Yeah, not bad. Definitely way better than that last shite they put out. Way better. So I'll be interested to hear what the rest of the album sounds like. Okay, we move on. Heirophant, Crypt of Existence track launched. Heirophant are proud to unveil the second new track taken from the upcoming album Death Siege. The new full-length is set for worldwide release on August the 26th, 2022. Crypt of Existence, which is accompanied by a lyric video, is now streaming via the official Season of Mist YouTube channel. Video by Gabrielle Lay. Let's give this a listen. Filthy, blasting, hateful, violent. It kind of has a mid-fi production. It's not quite too crusty. It's not crusty enough to be lo-fi. It's definitely nothing like that Fallujah production, but it just has a kind of warm, filthy sound to it. And it seems like Season of Mist are starting to specialize in these types of bands. Hell Militia was a not too dissimilar type of release. And now they're putting out this one. There was one that they put out last year as well that I really enjoyed. And I actually was going to have the guy from the band on the podcast. I'm not going to bother looking on my phone to see who it is. It'll come to me in a second. But yeah, good stuff. Really, really like it. And if she's listening, I want to stress again, Katie, we're waiting on your podcast. The Four Horsemen of the Apocalypse needs the Maiden of Mayhem to join us. So yeah, very much looking forward to seeing what that podcast ends up looking like once she puts it out. She used to be superb on the Pit, and obviously she's been on this show a couple of times, and is great. Also great for the ratings. So yeah, no, very, very much looking forward to that, and looking forward to hearing the rest of that Heirophant record. That first single they put out, I was not as sold on, but this one really liking. Sepultura to begin working on next album in 2023. Yeah, whatever. The more important news about Sepultura, you may have heard that Andreas Kiss's wife has passed away of colon cancer. Very tragic story, and I don't want to try and imagine how devastated he is. So my humble condolences to him. If anyone who knows him hears this, or, if perchance he happens to stumble upon what some have called, but specifically Katie of Season of Mist, one of the best and biggest black metal podcasts on the internet. I really, really, my heart goes out to you. I can't think of anything worse, especially if you're on the road and, you weren't there for those last moments. So anyways, let's move on. Catalyst joined the Non-Servium Records roster. Tech death metal formation from France, Catalyst are proud to announce that their sophomore album will be released by Dutch record label Non-Servium Records this coming autumn. Non-Servium Records is starting to make some interesting moves. There's actually quite a few new record labels that are starting to do, not new, but newish, that are starting to do very cool stuff, in my opinion. What is not cool, however, is Bad Wolves, one of the worst bands maybe ever. And I remember really liking God Forbid and having spoken with Doc Coyle and really liking him. But he has fallen prey to the predations of the woke ideology. And Bad Wolves musically reflects his descent into some of the stupid thinking that permeates through that mindset, through that lifestyle choice. Lunar Spells announced second album, details disclosed. Greek black metal band Lunar Spells announced Demise of Heaven, the second full-length installment, to be released on September the 9th, 2022 via Northern Silence Productions. It was recorded between February and November of 2021, mixed and mastered by the band, and you can give a listen to it right now. We will do so. And then we'll head over to the Democrat's Guide to Rock Music. But yeah, before that, let's give Lunar Spells a quick spin. Not bad, but I will give these fellas a word of advice. I'm not sure that you guys are the ones to mix and master your band. So go check out my bro Nassos of Utkana, who I believe is local to you. He will do a superb job, as he did with that Utkana record, but yeah, that's not it. It sounds like there's a lot of potential there, but that production does not cut the mustard. And those drums have a distinct Saint Anger vibe to them. Okay, we head over to the Democrat's Guide to Rock Music. And what is the first thing we see? Dee Snider doesn't think he will record music anymore. Oh, no. It says here, Dee Snider doesn't believe that he will record new music anymore. The 67-year-old Twisted Sister frontman who released 2 solo albums in the last 4 years touched upon his future plans while answering questions on Twitter on Saturday, July the 9th. When one Twitter user commented that he is amazed to see legendary artists like Paul McCartney and Buddy Guy performing in their 80s, Snyder wrote, "God bless them all, I can only do what's right for me, and for my retirement I'm writing screenplays, directing a movie, releasing my first fiction novel, producing 2 animated series, etc., etc., etc. My wife laughs that when I tell her I'm retiring." Now, question, I wonder whether or not he had a falling out with one Jamie Jaster, who I know spearheaded those 2 solo records, both of whom were pretty terrible, but better than you would have expected him to do by himself. Because I can tell you this much, left to his own devices, I can only imagine how poor his movie will be. But anyway, yeah, so no more D. Snyder music. Sadly, though, his political commentary will be with us, or will be something that we are forced to endure if we follow any sort of metal news websites until such a time as he has left this mortal coil. I don't normally talk about Five Finger Death Punch, but only because I almost call them Five Finger Death Lunch. That is because on the Facebook page that I've hinted at previously, that's what I call them on there. But what I was going to say is that picture of Zoltan, he looks like he lifts himself some serious fucking weights. I don't know if it's just the picture, but Jesus Christ, he looks much bigger than I can recall him seeing. System of a Down drummer admits he lost a ton of social media followers with his pro-Trump posts. No surprise, mate. Especially not if you've attended a System of a Down show. You can't imagine a lot of those folks strutting around in their MAGA caps. Jerry Cantrell on Alice in Chains, we're still creating at a top level. I would agree with that. I really, really, really like that Alice in Chains influence that's on that Greg Prosciutto solo record. I spoke about it last week. But looking forward to hearing whatever Alice in Chains do next as well. I think those last 2 that they did with Will Duvall's his name, I think is very, very cool. Metallica duets with Eddie Munson of Stranger Things in split-screen TikTok video. I want to go on record as saying that in addition to Ozark being a complete pile of shit, I also happen to think that Stranger Things is one of the most overrated loads of garbage that I have ever had the misfortune of seeing. I managed to last through 3 episodes of season 1, and then I switched it off. I could no longer take it. I don't know what the fascination is with it. I think it is absolutely terrible. So let's move. I tell you what is pretty good though. I've started watching We Own the City, which is a HBO show produced by the same people that did The Wire. That is very, very good. We finished watching Better Call Saul up to the midpoint of season 6, which is where they've cut it off, and I think now, as of next week, the next part is going to start showing. And then we also went back and we rewatched Bloodline. I had seen it previously, Paige had not. So we watched season 1, really enjoyed it. Season 2, such a complete load of crap. Much worse than I remember it being when I watched it the first time. When I watched it the first time, I remember it kind of going downhill a little bit. But maybe, again, I'm just getting older and less tolerant of this sort of stuff. But it is absolute fucking garbage. So we've stopped about 2 or 3 episodes in. I would literally rather watch a blank screen than put myself through any more of that. But that seems to be a common thing with Netflix shows. They will release something, first season's amazing, and then it's like they just don't give a shit anymore. Budgets get cut. Like we've got all the subscribers that we are going to possibly get from that IP. So no more. We're gonna shelve that for all intents and purposes and move on to the next thing. We'll write a few more seasons just to kind of get it out the way, but and that I do think that hurts the medium of long form television, because will you in the current climate have seen a show like The Wire or The Sopranos or Boardwalk Empire? I actually don't think that you would. But that being said, TV is churning out some decent stuff again. Finally, I have on my list to watch Severance that I've not watched yet. I know that the mics of Necromaniacs rate that very, very highly. So I've got that. What else have I got? Deuces, which is something that I'd actually missed. I did see that HBO have cancelled it now, and season 3 is going to be the last. But the parts that I've seen so far look extremely promising. And I'm trying to think what else. Everyone keeps raving about Yellowstone, but I've not watched that yet. I will watch that at some point, but again, I'm picky when it comes to crime stuff. I do like a degree of realism. That's what put me off of Ozark so much. You can't watch Narcos and see, how the drug trade is presented there, which I think is done probably not 100% realistically, but there's a degree of accuracy and a degree of grit that they bring to the table there. Then you move over to Ozark, and it is just a fucking absolute joke. I mean, it's tear your hair out, screaming out loud at the screen. How can people be this stupid? And you don't know whether you're talking about the characters in the show or the audience actually watching the show. By which point I also mean, I've got 4 fingers pointed back at myself, because I did force myself to sit through every single thing until the last episode. And again, last episode, total shit. Okay, is there anything else on here that is... by the way, I am super surprised that I'm through maybe 15 headlines, and I haven't seen one headline featuring a quote by Ted Nugent or Corey Taylor, which seems to be Borry of Blabbermouths to Man Crushers. However, they have answered one of the most important questions of our time, really a burning one which no one has ever explored. Did Black Sabbath invent heavy metal? Anthrax's Frank Bello weighs in. During an appearance on the latest episode of the Mistress Carrie podcast, Anthrax bassist Frank Bello was asked if he would agree with the assertion that Black Sabbath single-handedly and unintentionally invented heavy metal with the release of its 1970 self-titled debut album. He responded, as transcribed by blabmouth.net, "Look, you're asking a Sabbath fan? Of course. For me, it's right there. Listen to Black Sabbath. For me, yeah, I grew up on that, so I have to say yes to that. And they still stand up. Those songs still stand up. So yeah, for me, yes." Very articulate, as you would expect from Frank. Actually, no, Frank seems like a nice guy. And Black Sabbath is a great record. I don't understand why people are still asking this question, because it's very obvious the first proper metal record, without a shadow of a doubt, was Black Sabbath. It's a bit like people that, keep going on about, who invented death metal? Was it Possessed, or was it Chuck Schuldiner and Death? Anyways, let's see if there's anything else. Ex-Ghost member Linton Rubino says band's latest album, Impera, is not very good. I would strongly agree with Linton. I would go back and say, not only is it not very good, but it is an absolute disgrace. Obviously, Shayan and I spoke about it on our episode, so don't need to go into that too much, but it is muck. No two ways about it. Leave the guy alone. Vince Neil's teleprompter reliance defended by members of Disturbed, Striper, and Shinedown. I'm no friend of the crew, but I will say this. I actually kind of agree with them. I mean, yes, you probably should be rehearsed enough that you can sing your own songs, and I don't know whether, the top of the food chain guys like Mick Jagger and people like that use teleprompters, but you're old. You've had a life where you burnt the candle at both ends. Injected and or drunk and or snorted a load of substances that you shouldn't have, that were going to naturally be damaging to your brain. And obviously I'd say between that and the trans fats that Vince Neil has been ingesting en masse, it's not easy to remember all those lyrics. So I don't blame him. I think as long as it's not, him picking up the scraps of paper and reading off of it, mid-show, then who gives a shit? If people are there and they're enjoying it, it doesn't matter. It's kind of the same argument, I guess, with, some people will see a YouTube clip of somebody and they'll go, that Axl Rose should back it up, or, that John Bon Jovi should back it up. Well, should they? if there's loads of people at the show and they're having a good time and they don't feel ripped off, I don't really see the harm, to be quite honest. Let's see. Cam Lee admits it was bad choice of wording to say Chuck Schuldiner ripped off Possessed. I think it's a bad choice of wording to say anything bad about Chuck Schuldiner, period. I mean, that guy does enjoy a level of reverence when it comes to extreme music, including for me, that almost leaves him beyond reproach. I mean, I dread the day when there's some sort of backward cancelling move against him because, like everybody, I'm sure he's got skeletons in the closet. But really, from a musical perspective and, what he contributed to the music we listen to, I think most people know better than to run their mouth. However, Cam Lee apparently did not. So it says here, although Death is considered to be one of the most important and influential death metal acts of all time, the Florida-based band did not release its debut album Scream Bloody Gore until 1987, 2 years after the arrival of Seven Churches by California's Possessed, whose bassist vocalist Jeff Becerra is credited by some with initially creating the term death metal in 1983. In a new interview with Andrew Daly of VW Music, Cam Lee, who was a member of an early version of Death, as well as the pre-Death band Mantis, alongside guitarist vocalist Chuck Schuldiner and guitarist Rick Ross, once again weighed in on the never-ending debate on who can lay claim to being the first true death metal band, Death or Possessed. He said, "Look, I'm not going to say that Death started the death metal genre. I'm not going to say that they didn't start the death metal genre. I will say that we were there at the beginning with a lot of other bands. You can't ignore the facts, and the facts show that guys like Killjoy and Necrosphere were there in 1985. You had Paul Speckman of Master, Tom Warrior of Hellhammer, and Jeff of Possessed there too. There were so many great people during the early days, and all had essential parts in the creation of it." I agree with him, actually. I don't think he's wrong, but again, you watch your mouth when it comes to Chuck. I don't think he ripped off Possessed whatsoever, but I do think that Seven Churches is probably the first proper death metal record. So now that Jackie of Into the Necrosphere has issued his opinion, that means it's case closed. So, folks, it doesn't look like there's a whole bunch of other stuff that's worth looking at. So, as ever, let me not finish off this week without sharing some of the wackest news headlines that I managed to uncover over the course of the last 7 days. The first one comes from New York Post. Making the cut, younger men seek vasectomies in the wake of Roe v. Wade ruling. I have spotted this very bizarre clamor from certain guys who clearly think that the way for them to get in good with members of the opposite sex in 2022 is to take an almost zealous stance on being pro-choice. And, I've said before, I'm pro-choice, but I'm not pro-choice to the point of being a complete and utter simp who is now running around boldly proclaiming that I'm going to get a vasectomy because it's not fair that, I should be allowed to, or I should be, be able to run the risk of getting a woman pregnant. I mean, Jesus Christ, how fucking stupid can you be? Another classic off of CNN Business. Who decides if the U.S. is in a recession? 8 white economists you've never heard of. No. Who decides whether the U.S. is in a recession is the GDP of the last 2 quarters. And if it fell, then the U.S. is, by definitive terms, in a recession. If you follow Peter Zion, he believes that the U.S. could potentially skip it, or at the very least be in a reasonably shallow recession, which I think is potentially more reasonable. And that's going to be as a result of insourcing, nearshoring, investment that has to happen domestically as the U.S. decouples from China and decouples from a lot of the global world order. So if you're in America, much like I said a couple of weeks ago, count your fucking lucky stars, because look at the complete and utter shambles that is taking place in Europe. I mean, that is a continent that seems hell-bent on being the architects of their own destruction. Case in point, if you have been following the news, you will have seen there are these mass demonstrations taking place on the border between the Netherlands and Germany at the moment. Is it the border between the... Anyway, it's in the Netherlands. Farmers, firing tsunamis of cow poo at government buildings, taking cows to the front of or front steps of government offices and threatening to slaughter them right there. The long and short of it basically is the EU have mandated all of these ridiculous nitro or nitrogen pollution targets, and if implemented, it would mean that something like a third of working farms in the Netherlands would need to shut down. Now, this is happening against a backdrop of potentially a global famine, and us being told that world hunger is about to strike and we're going to have to sacrifice food to be sent to countries who need it more. The mind boggles at how politicians think this is a good idea. I am firmly in the corner of these Dutch farmers. I think what the government has done is a complete and utter disgrace. I see Italian farmers have joined in as well, and I'm pretty sure, knowing how this miserable country that I live in it works, we'll have something similar inflicted upon us here as well. But I spoke to Shayan about this offline, and I do find myself wrestling with this idea that it's simply just a case of political incompetence that we're seeing. It's just everything that we see, whether it's the fucking up of the energy security in Europe, causing inflation by printing billions and billions of euros, pounds, and dollars, and then acting surprised that it would happen when you devalue your currency. You look at that and you go, yes, it may all just be incompetence, and there's not some sort of grand cabal behind it all. The idea of the Great Reset is a bit overblown and whatnot. But then I go, but if that's the case, how is it possible for people to get to this station in public life and be this absolutely atrocious at what they do? It's stunning. Absolutely staggering. And the more I see some of what I really do think is Great Reset related propaganda, going out into the internet onto the internet, appearing on, reasonably respected or at least once respected mainstream media sources, the more I do think like something is seriously amiss. There's something going on that I think, if we knew the extent of it, I think our jaws would, go right through the floor. A good example of this propaganda that I speak of, Popular Science posted an article on the 3rd of July. We can't lower our meat consumption without rethinking masculinity. People think beef is manly, and that's a big problem. Now, Shayan and I spoke about the connection between zinc shortage, the effect that has on prostate, fertility, testosterone levels. Why are they trying to tell us things like this? Or why are they trying to convince us of something that, again, medically is demonstrably untrue? There was another one that I saw as well. Let's see if I can try and find it. It was something equally ridiculous, referring to infertility amongst modern men. And the fact that, I can't find it now, but anyway, it's something to the effect of, infertility is increasing. We should embrace that. Why? Part of the reason that the world is staring down the challenges that's going to hit it in the next decade and beyond is in part as a result of infertility. It's a result of urbanization. People are having less kids, and now we are going to be seeing demographic collapse across a number of different countries. And that is going to have absolutely catastrophic consequences on the economy. It's going to have catastrophic consequences on a lot of different things. And if you have not read it yet, I urge you to check out The End of the World is Just the Beginning by Peter Zeihan. You will have heard Sam Bean and I talk about it. It is absolutely fantastic. It's one of the most frightening things I've ever read in my entire life. But he talks an awful lot about the demographic collapse in there. And again, why they're trying to convince us of this, I just don't know. Tied to that, another ridiculous headline, this from the New York Post on July 4th. Las Vegas hotels to deliver VR porn headsets via robot to lonely guests. Another one, again, how we've gotten to a point where these people are even in government, I have no fucking idea. But the head of, I don't know if what the actual title is. I think it's like the waste dispositioning or nuclear or energy waste dispositioning. Either way, he's a top Biden staffer. The headline here reads, top new Biden staffer defended underage gay prostitution website raided by feds in jaw-dropping 2015 article. And again, this is from the National Pulse. Whistleblower demands investigation into Biden's nuclear drag queen hiring process, alleging substantial irregularities. I don't know whether you guys saw the video that was doing the rounds last week of this woman who is running for, it's a Democrat running for re-election. I can't remember what the state is. I'm going to find it because this is just too funny not to be able to at least substantiate. Because if I just say it without saying the name, you guys are going to think I'm talking shit. Her name is State Senator Tiara Mack, and she is running for re-election in Rhode Island. So Rhode Island State Senator for District 6 has posted a campaign video of herself twerking upside down on TikTok in possibly the most unusual canvas yet. The closest I have seen the human race come to idiocracy that I have ever seen in my life. And tied to that, another asinine article by the Metro, which again is a haven for stupidity, but anyway. There is nothing inappropriate about drag queens performing for children. I recognize that the UK does not have the same gun problem as the US. Why do you bring guns into the drag queen discussion? It's two totally separate things. But right-wing talking points in the US quickly make their way to us. It's important to question the motives of these topics, and especially what they're looking to distract from. The main thing to distract from in this country is that we've just ousted a prime minister who is probably the biggest idiot that has ever held public office in the history of this country. A guy who pretended to be conservative, was as woke as it comes, is no different ideologically from any of the fucking idiot Democrats in North America. And God only knows who is now going to replace him. And on that note, my friends, that positive, hopeful note, I am wrapping up the news for this week. Friends, if you have stuck with me until the very end of the show, thank you so much. Your support is gratefully and humbly received, and I will be back again next week. I've got a couple of very good guests in the pipeline, including one of the gentlemen of Internal Bleeding, and I'm also due a catch-up with my friend Jeremy Wagner of Broken Hope. As I've said before, but some of you may have missed it, fun fact, the name Into the Necrosphere comes from a Broken Hope song, and it was given to me with Jeremy's blessing. So he's been busy with all sorts of crazy shit, so very excited about potentially catching up with him. Another band I would love to catch up with at some point is VIMUR out of Georgia. I spoke about them on last week's news rant. Really, really liked the clip that I had listened to when we were doing our reacts. I have since gone back and listened to the full record, Transcendental Violence. I'll probably talk about it in more detail on next week's show. But for now, I wanted to leave you guys with a song as I say goodbye. Wherever it is that you are, whatever it is that you're doing, I hope that you stay safe and stay healthy. I'll see all of you next week. This is Aeonic Upheaval.